Okay, Rick, we are live on Facebook and recording now, so you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, we'll call this council work session to order. September 16th, the time is 1:02 p.m. I will now open it up for visitor comments.
I do have one statement that was emailed to myself, Kathy, and John that is read, and I know looks like we have two people in the chat that I can call on for public comments after that. Mayor, if you're okay if I go ahead and read this into the record?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So this is from Ryan Drake of Drake's Towing. It's about a page or so long. It states, so lately we have towed a number of stolen vehicles. Today was especially hard for me. Last year when somebody got their car stolen, I was very light on the bill with them because I knew I was getting the next tow in town, sharing the St. Helens towing program. Especially this year forces me to charge our citizens more. I have to charge them more to get the stolen car back because it was my turn to tow the stolen car. I have to charge enough to try to keep my local business afloat. Unlike last year, I had the option of cutting more price breaks to people that needed it. I can't count on the next call, whether it be an accident or a DUI, etc., to pay my overhead or keep my local business in business. So this really breaks my heart. I really miss having the availability of having the opportunity and financial freedom to give the community a price break when it's needed or called for. I really would like the city tow contract back. Let me use it to benefit our community. Good afternoon, City of St. Helens councilors. My name is Ryan Drake. I sent a letter a few weeks ago and did not receive any response, so I am trying again. I own the local towing company, Drake's Towing in St. Helens, Oregon. My company won the bid to be the official towing company for the city of St. Helens a couple years ago. At that time, there was another company that felt they didn't get a chance to bid properly, so I was told that they tried to sue the city even though their company had an exclusive contract in the city where they reside. Your bid process was based on the bid process that awarded his company exclusive rights in a nearby city. Much to my dismay, I can only assume because of the cost of the suit that the city of St. Helens, Oregon decided to not reissue the opportunity to even have an exclusive towing company this year. This has resulted in citizens of our community actually paying more for towing services. Sometimes they are towed further away than is necessary, and different companies charge different rates. This makes me frustrated because my company has received very good reviews, and now at times folks don't know that they could be towed at less due to the rotation in place. Then I heard of a statement that was made by a citizen after a records request was ordered regarding legal fees for the city of St. Helens is paying as a result of one of their counselors, Steve Topaz. I heard that this counselor had already cost the city almost $300,000 in legal fees or more because of the bogus claims he has made, and that now an attorney must be present at every meeting too. This made me really upset. So if a counselor wastes paying dollars, that's okay. But the city of St. Helens, Oregon won't even try to protect a legitimate bid process to continue that benefits the citizens directly. Are you demanding that this counselor repay the fees or leave the position? What's going on? If not for this records request, I would still be in the dark as to why the city of St. Helens would not support a local business owner in a manner that is done in so many other cities. Now I have inkling that maybe money not intended to be spent on bogus legal dalliances by a counselor is making other counselors make decisions they may not really have wanted to make. I'm just a little business owner trying to wade through why decisions are made when none seem logical. If not for the records request, I would be left to be just guess that the counselor simply doesn't care about supporting local businesses. Now I see other factors may be at play. Can you request the counselor costing us citizens all this money leave so that local tax-paying businesses can get support they deserve from the council? I would really like to be able to bid on this contract again. In the past weeks, car theft is at a record high and people have to pay more than they might have to if they were in a contract with the city of St. Helens, Oregon. Again, all I am asking is to have an opportunity to bid. Surely you will have the opportunity and ability to do this without legal obligations. Maybe some dollars could be saved if Councilor Topaz wasn't there and money could be directed to positive results for us business owners, and you could consult an attorney to ensure the process is legitimate and fair. I'm officially requesting that the city of St. Helens, Oregon have an RFP open to an official towing company. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. We will kick that up to the evening session and have that as part of a discussion.
Yes, I do believe I have Jenny Dimshow that wanted to make a brief statement during visitor comments.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Jenny.
Great. Can you all hear me?
Yep, you can.
Awesome. Great, thanks. Normally this wouldn't happen during visitor comments, but because it's moving quickly, I just wanted to make a short announcement and thank the Scappoose Bay Watershed Council, specifically Dana Pritchard wrote a grant for us to be able to remove invasive species, including blackberry and ivy, and do some follow-up chemical treatment with a small crew. So we were awarded $12,000 from the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. And Dana Pritchard has agreed to do all of the grant management. So I just wanted to let council know and thank the Scappoose Bay Watershed Council for working with us to improve the quality of our 5th Street Nature Trail that just was installed, and also Nob Hill Nature Park. So just wanted to let everybody know that work's gonna happen in the next 2 years. And there's been a great partnership formed with Scappoose Bay Watershed Council for that. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Scappoose Water Bay Council. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Anytime you want to interrupt in visitor comments with something like that is perfectly okay. Thank you.
We do have one more. It says, Al, I went ahead and unmuted you, and I'm going to ask you to start your video if you would like. You may have to unmute yourself on your end.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Okay, this is Al Peterson. Address is 101 St. Helens Street. I'm the chairman of Shedco, and I'm here because I notice on your agenda that you've got Sherry Stewart from Oregon Main Street, who's going to be presenting to you the results of a survey that was being done by Shedco and by Sherry. But I'm not going to get into that. I'll just let Sherry deal with that. But I just wanted to give the City Council a quick update on what's been happening with Shedco. Of course, with all of the COVID-19 stuff, we've been having most of our meetings through Zoom, although we've restarted having our meetings at the Wild Current on our normal scheduled meeting times, which are the last weekend of every month. You're all invited to attend. So a few items that I wanted to give you an update on. The promotions committee, because of the COVID-19, well, pretty much most nonprofits, because of this COVID-19 crisis, have been really kicked in the pants. Our ability to do things has been severely limited, although the promotions committee has been promoting local businesses along our main street through social media and live streams and things like that on Facebook. I wanted to give an update on the Main Street grants. The 2 Main Street grants are the latest Main Street grant, which is the Columbia Theater. As everyone noticed, during the height of the coronavirus pandemic, the marquee was replaced on the Columbia Theater. That had been ordered in early January. The installation was slowed down a little bit because they had to slow the production, but they eventually got done and brought it up here and installed it. And I want to thank Jennifer Dimshow and Crystal Farnsworth for helping us document the reinstall. When I could not be available, they were available when it was being installed. And then we traded photographs and documented the install so that the reimbursement could happen. The reimbursement, so for the total value of the marquee was approximately $61,000, and the reimbursement from the Oregon Main Street grant was $51,842 and some change. So it's a significant benefit to the Columbia Theater, the Main Street grant through Shedco. The other grant, which there's been some discussion in the past, was the El Tapatio Grant. The El Tapatio Grant expired in May, since little to no construction had been done on that project in 3 years. In March, or actually I was thinking the 1st of April, Jedco sent a letter to El Tapatio informing them that the grant was expiring and that they had lost out on that $100,000. The last thing that I wanted to let you know about is you may remember Shedco did a second business plan competition last year. Early in the summer was when the announcement was made that Hollow's Pizza won the business plan competition. Hollow's Pizza was slowed down in getting their pizza trailer, I guess it is, put together, and then they also got slowed down because of fire sprinkler requirements over the pizza oven. But in any case, they were able to get through that construction process and got all the approvals done about the time COVID-19 came around. So that put a damper on things. But I'm proud to announce that through social media, Shedco found out, evidently Jamie likes Instagram rather than Facebook, and I'm not on Instagram, so I don't know how he's been promoting it, but I'm proud to announce that his first day of being open will be this Friday. And so he's gonna crank up the wood-fired pizza oven and be selling pizzas this Friday. You may have seen it at George's Food Pod there next to Wana Credit Union. I think they moved it in there about 3 weeks ago and has been setting it up since then. So about 2 months ago, I talked to Robert Blumberg because, as you know, the grant was a $5,000 grant, and then it was a $20,000 zero interest loan from Wana Credit Union. And Wana is very pleased with the Main Street, or not Main Street grant, but the business plan competition has been unfolding. Hollow's Pizza took advantage of the grant and then took advantage of the loan, and then has been making payments on the loan just like clockwork. So Wana Bank is very pleased as well with the business plan competition. It's a little unfortunate that the city didn't take part in that, but it was a great program, and everyone involved has been very happy with it. So those are kind of the three things that I wanted to let you know about, and what Shedco is currently still working on, and then of course all the promotions that we've been doing on our Facebook page has been helping out. Oh, one last thing, Shedco has been involved in raising money and raising materials for those people displaced by the wildfires who are out at the Columbia County Fairgrounds as well. So that's what's been happening with Shedco recently. And no use taking any more of your time. I'll let Sherry, when she is brought online, give you the update on the study that she conducted and her findings and recommendations. So thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Al.
Mayor,
Okay.
I don't see any other comments.
Okay. You read my mind. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the next thing, is an Employee Length of Service Award. And I'm pleased to announce that we are giving that award to Aaron Kunders, who works our wastewater, is head of our wastewater treatment facility. He has 20 years with the city of St. Helens. Appreciate all his effort and insight into keeping the operation going. There's a lot of work involved in doing what he does. toured the facility a number of times, and really appreciate his work. Is Aaron on board with us today?
He is not mayor.
Okay. So again, just want to congratulate him and appreciate his efforts for the last 20 years.
Mayor, I do apologize. We had a late person that didn't hear me make a comment about public records, and there is one more person that would like to make a public comment, if you'll
Sure.
allow it. Okay.
I will allow that. Yes, I will.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I just wanted to follow up on the very interested to see what Sherry Shepherd has to say about Shedco. But I just wanted to make a few points that the El Tapatio Grant.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, sorry, Brady Preheim, St. Helens.
Thank you, Brady.
That the failure of El Tapatio to take care of their grant is not a failure of El Tapatio. It's the responsibility of Shedco and their volunteers to make certain that that grant was administered correctly, part of the selection process to make certain that the business that receives the grant, in fact, could use it, and that, in fact, it wasn't delivered and used. And so to try and sort of push that blame off onto the business, it's really a Shedco fault. And I would also comment that it seems a little suspicious that for 2 years in a row, it just so happens that Al Peterson was the architect on both of the projects that actually won. So that's is rather concerning, and that's also a matter of public record that the person that wins the Shedco grant for 2 years in a row, he also had a financial interest in.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brady.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. So seeing no more, nobody else has come in, right, Nat?
Nope.
Okay. So now we are going to get on to the discussion regarding the status of Main Street program with Sherry Stewart, or Main Street, Oregon. So I'd like to introduce Sherry, if she's available. Matt?
I'm here.
There she
Thank
is.
you. Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Yep.
And Matt, will
can-
you show the PowerPoint, or are you going to screen share for me too?
I can share the PowerPoint, and you can
Okay,
just go ahead and
perfect.
tell me when you would like to go to the next slide.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to share the results of the community assessment visit that I conducted this past summer. Just a brief overview. I am the state coordinator for Oregon Main Street. We work with about 90 communities across the state in the revitalization of their historic downtowns and traditional commercial neighborhood districts. We've been involved with St. Helens and Shedco for about 10 years. You've been participating in our Oregon Main Street network. It was an application process to be accepted into our network. We last conducted an assessment for Shedco about 5 years ago. And so we really wanted to do a check-in to see the progress of the Main Street effort to date, and if there were some recommendations that we could make to help move the revitalization process along. The purpose of the assessment visit was really to help educate local leaders and community members about Main Street and what some of those keys to success are, to assess the capacity for St. Helens and Shedco to continue participating in our Oregon Main Street network at the Exploring Downtown level, which is our Main Street pathway. We have 3 levels in the Main Street pathway, and then we have associate level communities. We also wanted to identify key issues and opportunities for achieving local goals and to provide some specific recommendations on priorities related to the Main Street 4-point approach. So Matt, if you could move forward one slide for me. So the process, we did a few things.
Hey, Sherry,
Yeah.
not to interrupt you, but Matt, we need to have, a better view of this. It's really, no, actually you're too far out. You need to come in so we can see the whole page. Nope, other way. Yeah, because we're only getting a fraction of that page, Matt. And I don't know if you can make your screen bigger. I'm sorry, Sherry. I just want to make sure that your presentation looks okay. Rest of council seeing this?
So far,
So, it seems like we're only seeing half the page, doesn't it?
I think that's all there is on that page. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
This one, yeah. Yeah, we'll see on the next slide. That one has more top to bottom. So our process was one, a community online survey that was opened using the SurveyMonkey platform from July 10th to July 29th. We had 126 responses to the survey, which is actually pretty good for, you know, a focused survey about this. And when we asked questions, we framed it within the context of downtown, and what we meant by that was downtown on the historic portion and the Holton district. So that was explained in the survey that when we were asking questions, that was the area that we were covering. I also conducted 16 phone interviews. Each of those interviews lasted between 30 and 60 minutes, with the majority of being the longer time period than the shorter time period. Your community members were really willing to share. Also tried to reach 11 additional folks and left voice messages, but didn't have a response. I also did an online survey for Shedco board members and had 100% response to that. And then I also did a few surveys of the online presence, how some tools are being used. I looked at Department of Justice reports, Secretary of State reports, reviewed bylaws and some other materials as well. That all culminated in a short written report that was given to the Shedco board and a verbal report that was given to the Shedco board as well. And what I presented to them is essentially what I'm presenting to you this afternoon. So Matt, next slide, please. So I wanted to briefly go over some of the responses to the community survey because it sets a context for some of my observations and recommendations on how to move forward. In this survey, one of the first questions was, what are the 3 words that come to mind when you think about that downtown area? Again, it's that broader historic commercial area in St. Helens, both the downtown and the Holton district. So there were definitely some positives that came up. You can see one of the most prominent is potential. It's beautiful, it's quaint, it's historic, it's a riverfront town. So a lot of positive thoughts came to community members' minds. On the other hand, some negatives as well. It's empty, it's underutilized, it's lacking. It's in disrepair, run down, boring. So some of those words came up too. So that kind of gives me a sense of how people view your area and kind of sets the tone. So Matt, next slide. The next question, and the responses to this were actually a little bit surprising because again, the survey was during July and a lot of the conversations I've been having with communities are all related to concern about business closures related to COVID. But in St. Helens, top of mind for folks were the chronic vacancies that you experience. And this is something that came up in the first time that I did an assessment visit and certainly has been top of mind for your community for years. The variety of stores and selection of goods and services. From phone conversations, a similar ranking of issues, vacancies, rents actually was something that was mentioned as a second, business mix, and lack of leadership in the community also came up. So Matt, next slide. We asked whether community members had any suggestions for minimizing any of those issues that they identified. And some folks pointed to using the downtown spaces for businesses that are open. Some people commented that they felt that should be ground floor retail or commercial use were being used as home for residential use, which people didn't feel was appropriate. What was a consistent theme in both phone conversations and in surveys was the need for better cooperation between the city, organizations like Shedco, Keep It Local, the Chamber, and others. These comments here are specific comments from the survey, but they were kind of encapsulated what a lot of folks said. Consistent business hours came up a lot. A lot of people are kind of semi-business owners, people felt, and only open sometimes when they felt like it. And they thought for a business district purpose that was challenging for the other businesses that were there. The need for all to promote new business development and to support entrepreneurs in the opening of their businesses, and the ability to purchase properties in the historic areas as well. And then the need to revitalize buildings to attract businesses. People really feel like St. Helens could be this really cute, thriving old town, historic downtown. So Matt, next one. And we asked a question about what businesses people commonly visit, and this kind of gives a sense of how people utilize the district. And it's really kind of culture and entertainment right now, in the sense of restaurants are prominent, and restaurants overall is one of the key, but also a lot of the individual, and then the movie theater. Also some, local serving businesses, or some, needs-based businesses like Molly's were also mentioned. So that next one, we asked then, based upon how they use downtown, what kinds of businesses would you like to see or see more of downtown? And interestingly, food-based businesses and entertainment, cultural businesses, again, were prominently featured. Coffee shop, bakery was the #1 desired business for the downtown. And then the next slide, we kind of switched focus to kind of hone in more on Shedco and how they're viewed in the community and their operations. And so we asked how familiar people were. The good news is that there is brand recognition in the community. Of those surveyed, 58% said they were somewhat to extremely familiar with Shedco. So that's the good news. Now, the next slide, we asked if they're familiar, so those that were, those 58%, how would you rate them, with 1 not effective to 5 being extremely effective? And so good news, people know about Shedco. Not so good news, 56% of those who do know about Shedco rate it somewhat effective or below. And then the next slide, we asked how familiar people are with the activities and events previously sponsored by Shedco. So here's kind of a spread with some, a big chunk, a quarter or more, not being familiar at all. Some of the comments that we had were like, gosh, these sound like great things. Where do we learn more about them? And some happened so far in the past that people didn't recollect them, but some do have some visibility, certainly the business plan competition and the holiday lights and those kinds of things. And so then we asked what kinds of volunteer activities, when it's safe to do so, would people be interested in participating, so that you could work as a community to enhance the vibrancy and feel of the historic commercial areas. People were particularly interested in things that they could do as a family, and one of the most frequently mentioned things that people would like to volunteer for are beautification and cleanup efforts. And I know that those are some of the things that Shedco has done in the past, because I know I've seen some cute little photos of volunteers out doing those kinds of projects. So those are still some things that people would like to be participating in. There were a lot around historic preservation or painting. Interestingly, getting involved, rolling up their sleeves and helping with organizations collaborate more also came up. And frankly, that's unusual. I don't really see that very often when I conduct these kinds of surveys. And so that was interesting to me that that came up. And then some interesting ideas like creating a pop-up venue for local artists and craftspeople. And then sort of a wide variety of kinds of events people would be willing to participate in, as well as volunteers. Then we wanted to learn on the next slide how familiar people are with the Main Street approach, because Shedco has been working on these efforts for 10 years. So hopefully there was some familiarity. And in fact, there were about 48% were somewhat to extremely familiar with the Main Street approach. But then there was a good chunk that wasn't very familiar or not at all familiar. So kind of a half and half mix there. So I'm a glass half full kind of person. So I'll take it like, yay, almost half the community knew about Main Street, but certainly not. But that's somewhat to be expected as well, and not that unusual. In the next slide, we asked, well, based upon that, here's the 4 points of Main Street. Would you be interested in learning more about these? And in the comments, there were a lot like, yeah, this sounds really interesting. I'd like to learn more. And in fact, you could see a good chunk of people that responded were interested in different aspects of the Main Street approach. And then I'll wrap up with the final 2 questions on the survey that we asked. And in one, we asked, in one sentence, describe your hope for the future of downtown. This is where I really like to get a sense of where communities want to see their community in 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And this first sentence, again, these are pulled directly from the survey, I think really kind of encapsulates what a lot of people. So to see the hopes and dreams of people who are vested in having businesses be successful, be able to make a living, be able to give back to our business development, be willing to grow personally, learn about what other historic districts do to thrive, maintain, protect heritage, while creating a vision for all to want to be part, to prosper, be the historic district that becomes a model for others. The other thing that we saw a lot is that the city, CCET, Shedco Historic Society, and other interested organizations would develop a shared vision and kind of more that collaborative thing. And then on the next slide, a couple of other things came up quite a bit. To move past Halloween Town and make the town vibrant and family-friendly year-round. Just a side comment on that, in the survey responses, there were a lot of comments, as you probably could expect, about Halloween Town, even though that's not a Shedco activity. And I will say that it spans the spectrum of how your community members feel about that, to some that think it's really awesome and wonderful and adds a lot and helps support your businesses in the downtown as well, to some people that don't like it at all, to a big chunk in the middle that like it, but maybe not as long of a season as it is, and not to the exclusion of seeing these year-round activities that celebrate other things that St. Helens is about, particularly your history and heritage. So while a big chunk like having the Halloween Town because it's been effective and it has been putting St. Helens on the map, they don't want that to be the only thing that your community is known for. So just a side comment about that, just because I've read a lot about it and heard a lot about it on phone conversations as well, even though that's outside the scope of what I was doing with this assessment visit. But I'll just share those thoughts. And then just this last sentence is, I hope that St. Helens Historic District can live up to their potential and return to the fun, vibrant, fun small town it once was. And so then the final, and really there were pages and pages and pages of comments. I think there's like 60 pages of survey comments. We consolidated some of that information into the report that we shared with Shedco as well. But I always ask, what should I have asked and didn't ask, or what haven't we asked that you would like to share? And I did get quite a few comments here, and these are a couple that are representative. People just wanted to reiterate, the community and businesses need to work together. Enough of this he said, she said, or complaining. Let's work together to find solutions. So it really kind of felt like, both through this and some phone conversations that people were saying, let's let the past be the past and let's create a pathway forward that is positive and that brings everybody together. And then the second one is, I feel like a lot of the businesses that I've seen pop up and fail here are aimed at small niche markets that just don't exist in St. Helens. Business owners and local business development programs need to take a look at who actually lives and shops here. So that was one final comment somebody had made. So with that, I'd like to switch focus into the observations and recommendations. And frankly, when I usually do this type of visit, I am really looking at that Main Street 4-point structure, organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality, and really diving deeply into providing some recommendations in each of those 4 points. But I really, through this process, needed to focus really strongly on some board level things. And so, Matt, the next slide. So one of the questions that was at the back of my mind when I was doing this assessment visit this time, because it has been 10 years, and you know, we want to see that there's some progress being made, that there's some benchmarks, that there's some change happening as a result of the Main Street effort. So throughout this whole process, I continue to ask myself, is Main Street a good fit for St. Helens, or are we just trying to jam, you know, too small of a foot or too into, you know, a big shoe, or conversely? You know, and I thought hard about this, and as I was reading through the surveys and reflecting on the conversations that I had with your community members, I do think Main Street is a good fit. Fundamentally, your community members want to see a beautiful, revised, historic commercial area, both the downtown and the uptown kind of Holton district, that respects your town's history and heritage and character, while offering a mix of businesses that meets both local needs and is enticing to visitors. The Main Street structure can do that. And right now, Shedco is a Main Street organization that's working on behalf of St. Helens. They've had some bright spots over the years of achievement. They've received some state awards for events like Elf on the Shelf, and for the first business plan competition. So there's been these bright spots of effort and activity happening. But I think there's some fundamental challenges that are hampering the ability to make some significant progress. And so that's what this report is outlining. Some of those challenges, and then a pathway forward for the community to continue to implement the Main Street model. One, I looked at the board composition and the terms of board members as part of the assessment. So I went back to the Department of Justice. They have reports online for the past few years, back to 2015, and as part of the annual filing, and so it lists like board members and you know, individuals who are there. And I was kind of surprised to learn during that time period that Shedco, at least 2 of those years, only had 3 board members at the time of the reports, and with a maximum of 6 board members. And frankly, that's just too few hands on deck to implement a Main Street program. And so that has hampered Shedco's ability to move forward, I feel. The other thing that I look at is when I work with Main Street communities, And I've worked with Main Street communities for 30 years at all different levels. One of the things that I look at is the term of office, because I feel in the recommendation when I help communities start up is in their bylaws to have term limits for board members, and that should be a maximum of 6 years, either 2 3-year terms or 3 2-year terms before board members step off for a year. And this ensures that there's, new folks always coming on board. There's continuity, that an organization doesn't become stagnant, that it doesn't become perceived as any one individual's organization. So there's a lot of reasons why for Main Street organizations that I recommend those term limits. And I found that at least 2 board members have been serving on the board at least that long and in leadership capacities for that long. And so I normally recommend a lot more turnover than that. Again, just to, make it feel like it's an open organization. And it's a challenge when you're small and maybe, have tried some different recruitment efforts and people just haven't stepped to the forward, but it's an issue. And I think it's one of the things that are hampering their abilities. Again, effectiveness. I look at the effectiveness of the board. And we saw from the surveys that, over half the people that know about Shedco rate it as somewhat to not effective. So, that's a community. In the board surveys, on a scale of 1 to 10, I asked board members to how they rate themselves, and the average score was 5. So even board members are recognizing that they're not being effective or achieving what they hope to. And this is not a criticism of the individuals involved in the organization, because they have big hearts for St. Helens and have given a lot of their time and energy on behalf. It's just we're not getting the synergy, so to speak, that we would like to see to enable you to really unleash the power, so to speak, of the Main Street approach. Transparency is another area that I look at, because how transparent an organization is impacts how people view that organization. And I think that are some issues with transparency. Again, I don't think out of malicious intent, but with too few people on board, some things aren't being shared that could or should be, and there are some things that are required to be shared that could and should be shared. Also, I think the number of folks involved have hampered their ability to effectively communicate both what they're working on, and this affects all levels in terms of meeting notification or notification about opportunities to participate in events and activities. It certainly came up in some of the surveys when people didn't know what it was, even that Shedco was working on right now. And so communications is a huge piece of the pie, and there's a lot of different ways that need to use those tools effectively. It's somewhat not surprising when you have an all-volunteer organization that communication piece is a little bit lacking. But to the extent that it is in St. Helens, that is a concern. And then the piece that was most concerning is the partnerships. When I first started working with St. Helens and with Shedco, we got off to this huge start. I mean, there was strong leadership. We kicked it off with a community meeting. There was huge engagement. Everybody was kind of working together at that point. And rather than strengthening those partnerships as you've moved forward, it's actually deteriorated. And that's a concern, because it's hard enough to move forward with the Main Street effort with all stars in alignment. It's that much more challenging if we don't have good communication and good partnerships. I look at some of our other Main Street communities where there's such a strong relationship between local government and the Main Street organization, and how over the past 10 years, they've literally transformed their downtown districts. From Klamath Falls in the south, from going from upper floor vacancies to creating upper floor housing, to Astoria with all of the development that has been respectful of their history and heritage that has taken place, to Oregon City becoming a great American and a Main Street award-winning community, to little tiny towns like Port Orford and Dayton that, you know, have transformed their communities and they're achieving just what it was that they set out to do 10 years ago. But I think it really speaks to those strong partnerships that they've had between the city, and that those partnerships have deepened and richened over the years. And you know, and you can see the difference when you have the city support and the local nonprofit working in concert together. So that deteriorating partnership relationship is a huge concern to me. So the next slide are some of my recommendations. So first is the board, and then I have right after this another slide, and then I'll open it up and see if there's anything that you have questions about. But what I really suggested to the SHEDCO board when I presented these is that we really need to reconstitute SHEDCO to enable the Main Street organization to fully flourish and to really engage in the Main Street structure. And so what do I mean by reconstituting SHEDCO? You know, SHEDCO, again, has name brand and is structured and has the nonprofit status of 501c3, which is great. It's a great tool for a community to have that. You know, chambers of commerce are C6s, so it's great to have those entities, and the C3s. It just gives your city, you know, more tools to utilize to implement the revitalization that you want to see happen. But for St. Helens, I think we really need to expand the board. You know, as I mentioned, it's been 3 to 6 board members over the past 5 years or so. And that's absolutely not enough people to do all the work that a Main Street organization needs to undertake. And you have at least 2 board members, as I recollect, that should be, in my opinion, terming out just because of the longevity of serving with the organization and serving in leadership capacities. And again, this was shared with the SHEDCO board, so they're aware that this is my thought process on what I feel needs to happen to really move forward with the Main Street effort. Because I think it's so important for that trust to be rebuilt between the city and other partner organizations and SHEDCO. I feel like the best way to reconstitute the organization is to move forward with this new board, expanded board, but to have the oversight committee, the recruitment committee, so to speak, for a new board, be overseen by folks that are representing the city, SHEDCO members, and maybe partner organization as well on that recruitment, so that you can really get some new blood and some fresh perspective involved. And that's not to say that some of the existing board members couldn't apply or be part of that new board as well. I just really feel like those that have served at least 6 years really need to open up space for new folks to be involved. I feel very strongly about this next recommendation. I would fully like to see some financial support for this reconstituted organization provided by the city. A lot of our local governments are a financial and philosophical partner in revitalization efforts. Most of these are through MOUs with clear deliverables and benchmarks, with reports provided to the city on progress in meeting those deliverables and benchmarks, and that could be worked out between the new board and the city, what those expectations are. And I can certainly provide you some examples from some of our other communities like LeGrand and Klamath Falls that have those kinds of MOUs in place. I feel it's just really critical for the success is to have staff support. We have been working, SHEDCO over the past few years has been working almost entirely as a volunteer organization. Prior to that, the city was the partner with them in staffing the organization through AmeriCorps Vista and then AmeriCorps Rare participant. And so the city has been, super supportive in the past. But I feel, and you did have really great Rare participants and the Vista volunteer. So you did have some really talented young folks working, but I think this needs to be somebody that it's a permanent position, that you don't have that turnover, because with those types of programs, it's 11 months, a month off, and then tooling up, the new person, there's just too much turnover for the long haul for a Main Street program. It's good for startup, but not so good for a long haul strategy. So having that, ideally this would be a full-time position, but at a minimum. And that way you would be able to have more consistency in reporting, more consistency in notification, more consistency in communications overall. And somebody with their feet on the street to actually go and meet with business and property owners and local partners, and really to build those bridges and form that relationship that's so important for a Main Street effort. And then once those things are in place, I make some suggestions in the report on some, activities based upon the Main Street 4-point approach. Communities shared a lot of great ideas, but what we could do is a refreshed community-based development of goals and objectives. Where do you want to be in 5, 10, 15 years, so that we're moving you forward and you're not just treading water. So that's kind of like the really meat of the report is really around those board level observations and recommendations. But I will just mention, Matt, on the next slide, I looked at the 4 points of Main Street, and again looked at those comments and pulled out some of the higher priority things that people saw or talked about, improving the visual look of vacant spaces, cleanup and maintenance, which again, people said they were willing to volunteer with, so that would be great. Some placemaking activities, some people mentioned historic walking tours, pop-up art projects, organization, again, communication strategy, volunteer development. And in the past, your Vista volunteer, the first one you had, he put together a really great training materials and a whole volunteer development system. So it would be great to actually implement that. Diversifying funding streams. So I don't expect the city to fund the whole Main Street effort, but to be a partner. I know when I was an executive director of a Main Street organization, our local government initially set a goal of said, we'll give the organization this much and match dollar for dollar what you're able to raise from the private sector. And frankly, we went out and found 20 partners from the private sector that committed for a 3-year period to give us, $500 each to match, to fulfill our match with local government. So finding those diversified funding streams. Economic vitality, providing some business assistance, filling vacant spaces. In the 2015 report, there was actually a lot of information and recommendations around economic vitality. So really kind of going back and diving into that report. Same with the promotions, reviewing the report, because we gave some specific examples at that, but a couple of things, kind of capitalizing on the small town charm through marketing and storytelling and creating a series of events at the plaza. Again, people want to see some ongoing, smaller scale stuff, not just the big events that close down. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up, and I spoke really quickly, I know, but that kind of wraps up where we're at with the review process and then the recommendations. So I'll see if you have any questions for me before I sign off.
Yeah, Sherry, Doug
Sure.
Morton.
Hi.
Very nice presentation, very impressive. And one of the things that I had a question about is, as you know, we are a county seat, and in the city is located from our county, different municipality, and from our county is properties that would be involved in the Main Street program as well. As a matter of fact, I think the plaza is mentioned in your project as well. So how you were encouraging the city to become, a very strong, active partner. What about the county?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we do have some of our Main Street programs that are similar to you, that are the county seat. And in some of those cases, the counties are a financial partner as well with their revitalization. Usually at a much smaller dollar amount, and sometimes through their economic development fund or through some event support or those kinds of things, but certainly something that could be explored as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? My only question would be just the various organizations. Well, in looking at this, Sherry, did you find that, and have you run into this with other cities, we have 3 real local organizations, which would be SHEDCO, the Chamber, and Keep It Local, not to mention CSET, which is a different, I kind of set it aside because it's funded by various cities, and it's pretty focused on bringing main business in, but it also does serve all of our businesses. So it would be actually a 4th. Does that seem like a lot for a city our size to have 4 different organizations? Just asking a question.
Sure, and maybe one more than I normally see. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, at least one of those I could see kind of combining with one of the others, but that's without my scope. And so it's kind of would be stepping over my line to make that recommendation. But I will say that where I was an executive director, it was in a small town in Washington. At the time that I was there, the population was 6,000. I think the population is now 10,000 or close to that. But when we started, we were the new kid on the block, but we had a Chamber of Commerce, and then we had a countywide economic development group. I always felt like we were a nesting of service. So we were 501c3. We had a very specific focus area, the historic commercial core. Our Chamber of Commerce was actually area-wide Chamber of Commerce. So it was the city, but also it reached out to some of the smaller communities around us and covered that area. And then we had our whole countywide economic development. And while there were areas of overlap, there were also areas that weren't. And so there were some things over the long haul that we could collaborate on together. And we knew that if we were all strong, then we were serving our community the best that we possibly can. So it's kind of getting everybody in alignment with what your roles and responsibilities are, and then collaborate where you can, and then, excel where there's differences. Does that answer your question?
It did, actually. Yeah, it hit it 100%, because I was just sitting here thinking, how do you not overreach as a government into these littler facilities that are trying to do good ultimately? maybe a collaborative meeting amongst them all is, I mean, and so going to historical too, the chamber's been here forever. I've lived here, and it was the big event of the year, the Chamber Awards. And for all the businesses and recognitions of Citizens of the Year and a number of things that they used to do. And so we as a government don't want to overreach and, pay a bunch of attention to one versus the other, but we also need to look at the historical value of what's been running for quite some time too. So it's very difficult, but you actually kind of nailed it in a pretty good way there. So yes, thank you. Yep.
Sure thing. Yeah. I will say that that was a relationship that had to develop, because my first day on the job, I was the executive director, and I had a letter from the city government that said, you were supposed to be a 3-year project. It's a 5-year thing. Could you please shut down? I had a similar letter from the chamber, from all the other organizations. I was like, wow, I feel so welcome. Well, what I did is I sat down with the city and all of the individual city staff and say, what are your hopes and your dreams for downtown? And let's kind of chart that out. Met with the chamber, and over time, we built that strong partnership, because we got our elevator speech down, so to say. This is what we do. This is what the chamber does. This is what economic. This is the city's partnership role, and we're all working together on behalf of our community. And so that when I left that community, I felt like if there's nothing else that I did, that was one thing.
Absolutely.
We worked together.
It kind of categorizes everybody in their place, so there is no overreach.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so we had Jasmine here. I think that was through the RARE program. Is that correct, John Walsh?
Yeah.
I was fairly new, trying to learn government back then. So somebody, is that like a recommendation, what you were saying in the future, and a bigger board and kind of more open seats on that board? That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like the board needs to be broadened. And yes, somebody like Jasmine, but not like Jasmine in the sense that a RARE participant, it's more like a local job opportunity. That's a permanent position, so that you have continuity.
And yes, through private, and maybe say we'll match, for instance. Yeah. So, all right. Sounds like we got some work to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? I don't see any other counselors wanting to make a comment. Thank you, Sherry.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Yep.
I'll leave you now.
Okay.
You know where to find me, though, if you need anything.
We do.
All right. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the partnership update and release of phase 1 site characterization report. And I'm going to ask Kathy Lombardi and Abby Russell of Mall Foster and Alongi, to give their presentation.
Mayor, if I could give them a quick introduction, if that'd be
appropriate. That would be appropriate.
Yeah, they're here today to update us on a couple of things. One's their general services and what they have going on, relationship with the city. And the other one is to introduce the phase 1 site characterization report, which is the central waterfront project and the repurposing of the lagoon to usable ground is basically the concept there. But Mall Foster Longy has been with the city for, I believe, about 5 years now. They have served varying roles. The one role is our on-call environmental engineering services, so we can basically utilize them as an extension of staff for smaller projects and kind of information. And then they also serve in a project capacity where we get a scope and a budget, and it comes to council for authorization, and they look at that and they approve that. And a lot of times that's tied to some grant funding and things of that nature. And a lot of the work that they've done is backed up by state and federal grants. So I would introduce Kathy Lombardi and Abby Russell, and they're going to talk.
All right.
Presentation here. So.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And very quickly, Matt, I think you were asking if you can share the presentation, and that would be much appreciated. If you can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay.
Kathy, do you want to do the presentation and just I can have you share your screen, or would you like me to go through it?
if you could go through it and we can request advancing slides, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Matt. Great. Okay, I see it up. So good afternoon, Mayor Scholl, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today and provide an update on the work that we're doing with the City of St. Helens. As John mentioned, my name is Kathy Lombardi. I'm the Director of Operations as well as a Principal Engineer for MFA, and I'm based in our Portland office. And I'm joined by Abby Russell, who is a Senior Communications Specialist, and she's based in our Vancouver office, though we're all based virtually right in the moment. MFA has been working with the city for about 7 years on many projects and grants. And this is a great opportunity to provide an update on some of those projects, share some background and where those projects are now, and answer questions that you may have. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon, councilors and Mayor Scholl. It's lovely to see everyone today. I just wanted to give a little bit of background on MFA. We are a 100% employee-owned company that was founded in Vancouver, Washington 24 years ago. And today we have offices across the Pacific Northwest, including in Portland and Lake Oswego, Seattle, Bellingham, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We provide a number of core services, most of which we're actually employing in our work with the City of St. Helens. And as mentioned earlier, we've been partnering with the city since 2013. Next slide, please. MFA has a passion for helping communities, and we've been involved in many community development and brownfield projects around the region. And we've even been honored for our work on some of them. And we just wanted to share a few of those here with you. And they include projects in Portland and Astoria in Oregon, and Clark and Skagit counties in Washington. Next slide, please.
Since 2013, MFA has been helping the city with a number of projects. And I just wanted to draw some attention to those that are on the slide here. So starting with the veneer site, we have helped the city as it considered purchasing that veneer site property. We've also done similar support with the Boise White Paper site, helping the city perform due diligence as it considered purchasing that property, as well as the sediment repository and then feasibility associated market study. Both of those efforts have morphed into what is more commonly referred to now as the lagoon repurposing project. But at the time when those studies were undertaken, we took a look at the financial viability associated with the upland placement of sediment from the Willamette, and the Brownfields Assessment Program as well. So within St. Helens urban growth area, we've looked at removing barriers to redevelopment to create sites that were otherwise encumbered by barriers and constraints. And later tonight, our colleagues Seth Otto and Meredith DeAndrea will be providing an update on that project at the 6 p.m. public session. The last two that I wanted to speak to are what's awkwardly called the Intergovernmental Agreement. And that is essentially the preliminary technical work that's associated with the lagoon repurposing feasibility study, and then the related governance and public engagement, which has been in support of the lagoon repurposing feasibility study itself, and then of course focused on communications along that platform. Next slide, please. So we've been working with the city to seek and secure more than $1 million in grant funding over these last several years. And there's much to be celebrated here. The city has a lot to be proud of in terms of leveraging so much progress from those initial seeds of grant monies. And those began with the Business Oregon Brownfield Technical Assistance Grant that we helped the city to secure. And as we progress along the timeline into more recent years, we want to take a look at the 2013 Business Oregon Brownfield Technical Assistance, which was support for site assessment and prospective purchaser agreements. Then in 2014, the Business Oregon IPG, that integrated planning grant, and that was in support of community engagement, and then follow up to the city's great program of What's Your Waterfront Visioning. Moving into 2015 with the EPA area-wide grant, we helped the city focus on master planning of the former veneer mill site, and that involved design, analysis, community engagement, and a related framework plan that's actually helping to guide redevelopment there. Coming up into 2016, we've got the US EPA community-wide grant, which looks at expanding that brownfields program, more opportunities for redevelopment within the city's urban growth boundary, culminating in a completion of a property inventory and forest site assessments. And then the current grant, which I referred to as that intergovernmental agreement, that is a $500,000 state of Oregon grant. And that's an agreement between the city and the state. And that's focused on studying the feasibility of the lagoon repurposing project. Next slide, please. And as you know, we've been working with the city on the lagoon repurposing project since about 2018. And the latest milestone in that project is the preliminary phase 1 site assessment report, which was shared by the city this past Monday. And the phase 1 report follows DEQ guidance and regulations pertaining to siting a waste disposal facility. And it also really focuses on a rigorous study of the physical site to inform the next steps in the process. And the phase 1 report is an early stage of understanding this property better, and it's part of the city's due diligence process and a very early step towards initiating the DEQ permitting process if the city and the community decide to move forward there. And as you can see on the slide, some of the elements that the phase 1 report touches on are really focused on that, the natural and historical resources, water resources, climate, hydrogeology, many of those physical site attributes that help to inform what the preliminary design of such a facility could look like. Next slide, please. So earlier this year, we developed a draft project timeline to essentially lay out the technical and permitting steps, as well as processes that would be required to redevelop the lagoon into a waste disposal facility. And so you can see here, there are three streams of process that are involved in the lagoon repurposing, one being the facility itself, the second being the in-water components, that offloading facility, and the third and important component is looking at the wastewater treatment plant impacts and potential for movement of that facility or a different combination of operations there. If the city and the community decide to move forward, this is what the timeline for redevelopment could look like. And it is a draft for planning purposes, and it kind of takes into account the potential for a continual process uninterrupted by lapses in grant funding. So that's just a sense of what a smooth sailing timeline could look like. And so where we are now in the process is we are essentially at the end of what I've referred to as that intergovernmental agreement funding package. So that's the closing out of that $500,000 in grant monies that have been focused on the phase 1 site investigation and other components. And so we are moving towards completion of a draft site development plan. That's essentially a conceptual design, as well as a preliminary risk assessment framework. And so some of the major milestones and deliverables over the next 4 years are laid out in this graphic, and they include, of course, a number of DEQ reporting milestones, agency approvals, initiation of permitting processes, and the like. And if you take this timeline to its conclusion of 2024, that's where we anticipate that permit approval for a waste disposal facility could be ready to go. And so then that would also trigger the beginning of the construction of the waste facility. And so if all this were to go according to this timeline, the city might be in a situation where they'd be ready to accept some of the first waste in 2025. And then the filling of the lagoon may take between 15 to 20 years. And that, of course, is dependent upon a number of factors, not the least of which might be the quantity of clean dredge materials from the harbor, from shipping lanes, and other waste sources.
And one of the things that you see here is in 2023 window, a permitting process that is part of the requirements of the joint permit application. What you don't see, since this draft timeline is focused on the processes that we need to move through, is all of the community engagement and communications that has happened previously that the city has already done, but also the planned community engagement and communications that would happen within this time frame. The city has been very dedicated to communicating and collaborating with its community over the past several years on waterfront projects, and they continue to engage with neighbors and businesses and other stakeholders and partners. And permitting processes, just sort of a segue here, permitting processes often have their own public engagement requirements, which you can see here, public notice, public hearing for the JPA. But these are not going to be the only or the last opportunities that folks will have to hear about the waterfront and projects before they're fully permitted. I don't have to tell you that the pandemic has complicated community engagement for all of us. Every single project that we're working on that involves community engagement has been impacted, and we've really had to pivot really hard during this pandemic. And we've been working with the city long enough, I feel safe in saying that we all believe in the right of citizens to access their government, to access information and get their questions answered. And in practice, we've not been able to do that in ways that we're used to and the community is used to over the past 6 months or so. We've mainly been able to provide information and reach people as best we can. And, you know, part of that is that all of us are focused on a lot of other things right now. COVID, of course, being sort of the underlying issue, but, you know, the wildfires in our region, there's, you know, been a lot of employment security issues, food security, our kids starting school virtually and all that comes along with that, and so much more. So we can put information out there, but it's only as good as our collective attention span, which is deservedly short at the moment. And so we've been working closely with city staff to come up with some creative ways to reach the community and provide information during this extraordinary time. These may be virtual town halls, they might be videos, or other remote options. And the other part of this is to get people to pay attention to the information and have it matter to them. Good engagement springboards from milestones and opportunities for meaningful engagement. We want to make sure that we're asking people to engage and spend their limited and precious time with us in those nexus areas where they can actually have an effect on the project and give input in meaningful times. So that's a big part of what's going to drive effective engagement, particularly during the pandemic, but certainly as the project moves forward through these preliminary steps. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Abby. I wanted to speak to some of the next steps in this closeout of tasks with the IGA. And so the final phase 1 site characterization report I mentioned was provided to the city. It was distributed last week on the 10th, I believe, and that's posted on the city's central waterfront webpage. And then later this month, we expect to submit the preliminary conceptual design report as well as the preliminary risk assessment. And so the conceptual design really focuses on the landfill, that repository facility itself, and how the operations may work. And then we're also preparing a preliminary risk assessment work plan, and that outlines how the risk assessment will be conducted in accordance with guidance prepared by DEQ for Cleaner Air Oregon. And some of the ongoing efforts, of course, are that we're continuing to work with the city to pursue additional funding for next steps in the project. The city continues to be committed to engaging with its state and local partners and community, sharing information like the Phase 1 report, sharing information through existing city newsletters, social media and events, and then really identifying those meaningful opportunities for engagement. Next slide.
That is really everything that we have for you, counselors, today. We greatly appreciate the partnership that we have with the City of St. Helens and want to thank you again for the opportunity to share the latest information with you this afternoon. And as you know, a lot more has happened over the last several years than what can be fit into a 15-minute PowerPoint update. So we're sure you have questions, and we would be more than happy to answer those.
Can I ask a question? The DEQ was very upset, I guess you might say, that there are no core drillings down the middle of the lagoon. And some of the core drillings determined that the Degami landslide area was there, which makes the southwest half of the lagoon a dangerous spot. The other major problem, you might say, with this, was some of the data was a little bit iffy. The report says the tide fall of the river is 2 feet. Seasonally, it's something like 25 feet. There's underground water flows around the lagoon that came up not in your wells, but other wells. And there's a strange amount of underground temperature, all of which says, and in fact, in your Appendix H, says you cannot build any real substantial buildings because the foundation work would have to be extensive. The other thing that comes up from the not the DEQ, the EPA's work from the Portland Harbor says they are only going to move extremely toxic material out of the harbor. They're going to hide all the other semi-toxic stuff in place. So if we're removing stuff from the Portland Harbor, it's going to be extremely toxic. We've got a landslide area that makes a great portion of this area unstable, and that's been in the Degami map since I think 1910. And we've got the contamination underneath the membrane that we have now. And your suggestions, again, or recommendations in the appendix says that you do not believe, or Moral Forces does not believe, the fill should be above the present levy, which greatly restricts the amount of material. Can you justify all this in putting a super toxic waste inside a town next to hopefully a waterfront? That's, that's, I'm trying to get together all these different areas that are not nice, and I'm trying to get the justification you have for continuing forward.
Councillor Topaz, this is Kathy Lombardi. I appreciate your questions, and I think I understand them in generally 2 lanes. Your comments on the Phase 1 site investigation report and DEQ's consideration of its adequacy as one, and then secondarily questions about risk associated with the toxic materials associated with some of the harbor sediments. So let me let me address your first question as best I can. So as I shared with you and the counselors just now in our review of the steps and work that MFA has done in support of the city's efforts here with the repurposing lagoon, we prepared the site investigation, the phase 1 site investigation report, so that it was compliant with DEQ's guidance and regulatory framework for permitting landfills. And though clearly we don't anticipate this being a landfill in the typical sense, as I think you know, we do have to follow that regulatory framework. And so the phase 1 site investigation is one of those initial components that's in alignment with that DEQ regulatory guidance and framework for siting such a facility. And so when we prepared the draft report, of course, we submitted it to DEQ for review and determination of adequacy and whether or not the report was suitable for finalization. And so we got that confirmation from DEQ that it was an appropriate level of investigation at this time, given what we know. And so we moved to finalize that report under their direction and guidance. And so that's what's been shared with the city. And that is the report that is the first part of your question. And so all of that is to say that indeed there are additional studies and analyses to be done and completed along that timeline of things. So we are in the very early phases. And so there are a lot of checks and balances in this process as we move forward. So there are all of the, like I say, checks and balances, opportunities to ensure comfort with the council, comfort with the city and constituents in terms of moving forward at each step. So I'd like to speak to the question about the super toxic waste and whether or not such material would be placed into this facility. So from the beginning of this project, we've worked closely with the city in terms of identifying what waste would or would not be placed in that facility should it ever be built, right? Should it ever receive waste. And the directive there is to ensure safety for the community. And so in other words, this will not be a hazardous waste landfill. This facility will not accept that high level waste from the harbor. That material will go elsewhere to other facilities. And part of the permitting process along the lines that will be developed are actually the criteria for acceptance. And so the city has a lot of control and opportunity to direct those requirements, right? So accept or not accept particular types of waste. So there is no expectation on MFA's part or the city's part that that facility would receive toxic waste.
Which leaves the question, the main supplier of material for this lagoon would be Portland Harbor. And presently, if it's not really, really toxic, they're going to encapsulate it in place or move it. So there's two things that can't come here. One, because it's not going to be moved, and two, it's not going to be brought in. There's also the business that goes back to the EPA and the harbor up scaling or cleanup is there's a margin along the Portland Harbor all the way down the Multnomah Channel, which includes this property, a certain setback that's going to be cleaned up. And I saw no indication in your report that that part of the EPA's cleanup of the local waterways was involved. Do you have any statement on that?
If I heard you correctly, Councillor Topaz, are you asking if we will address the local waterway, the local and proximal to the facility there in St. Helens?
Yes, well, part of it is because it's this overall Superfund project extends all the way down as their second phase. And I had expected with that knowledge, when you made some of these tests and observations, that some of the information would be ready to be used in that. That was, you know, there's an in the water cleanup that's going to be required for the Portland Harbor, and in the water extends all the way to St. Helens because of the Multnomah Channel contamination.
I see what you're getting at now, and the answer is that yes, those questions and the analysis required to answer them is part of future phases of work. And once again, just as a reminder and a reframe, we're in the very early steps of analysis. There are many steps to come.
Are there any steps that would say it is totally unsuitable, we need to go no further? Or is the process you have to take it all the way to the end, even though you're not going to use it, and we know you're not going to use it now? I mean, this is the bureaucratic world that you live in.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes is the first answer to your question, Councilor Topaz. I can speak on that on behalf of the city, and my statement that was given publicly about the presentation today is that this is just a report on the site. Is it doable or not? Everything you're talking about is yet to be determined. The in-water stuff around we have Boise on the hook for some of that. That is not what Mal Foster is just looking at the facility as a dump site. Is it feasible or not feasible? And you brought up all kinds of stuff that is really out of what this report is reflecting. We are not that far along. And that's what people in the community are assuming, is that we are a lot further along than what we are. And we're not. There's a bunch more community engagement to happen. There's a ton of materials that around our area, Armstrong being one, our in-water being another, the facility itself. If we did nothing, I appreciate all Mal Foster MFA's work that they have done, because now we know what the site consists of when this report was given to us. We actually know what's there. No matter what we did, we did our part as a city council to inform the public, the citizens of St. Helens, of what that is, the topography and the hydrology and all that's in that report, because I'm not an engineer, but it's all in there. And your thing on the EPA and drilling holes down the middle of that. Of course, we're not going to drill holes in the middle of a sewer. I mean, that would just be, the DEQ would probably Shanghai us. I've had to sign permits on that for our sewer down there. With the proximity of the paper mill, we're not going to be drilling any holes in the center of our sewer. We're not going to be doing it. Not right now.
Rick, the question was, if at some point we found one thing that says you can't do it, can we stop the process, or does the process have to go all the way?
It's always absolutely, we can pull the plug on it.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. That's what I needed to know.
Yes, even with a partnership with the state, we will definitely, the agreement would be that the city has the right to pull the plug at any point in time, even if we were partnered up with the state. And you've heard all that information before, Councilor Topaz, the different partnerships that we could go. Just because we have to be looking at this, because it is way projected out, but we have to be thinking about these things as we go as well, because we don't want to miss any steps in the process. Now, one more thing is that I hear, so I know you hear one side of the story, Councilor Topaz, but what I hear for the Portland Harbor is it's actually going to cost them more to cover it up than it is to dredge it. So the least toxic stuff is actually that they were talking about covering is actually going to be cheaper for them to dredge, is what I'm being told. And I could be wrong, but that's the rumor out there. And that's just the rumor out there. So I'd like to know where you got your source, because I'm just saying it's a rumor. I'm not saying it's true.
Rick, you're correct that it's cheaper to dredge it, but their plans right now, and it's their plans, was just to cover it. So you're correct in stating that it should be moved. I'm stating what their plans are as of, well, their last official meeting, which was Zoom, was last month. They're having another meeting today. But you're correct in stating that. That is not a...
Councilor Topaz, you keep saying that there are plans. There are no plans. There are absolutely conceptual plans. There's a huge difference. Yeah. Plans are something to be initiated. Conceptual plans are something to be talked about and conversed and worked through to a final outcome of a plan, a doable plan. So all of this is so conceptual at this point that of course things are dangerous. But the reason that the city council went forward on looking at the study of the lagoon is because we felt at that time, I'll have to say 6 or 8 years ago, Councilor Locke, you can correct me if I'm off base with that, but we deemed that lagoon as it exists is a detriment to our citizens at this point, especially if it's full of toxic material as well, and very, very dangerous to human beings. And so what do we do about that? Who is going to deal with that? Do we move forward as a council and address the issue and go ahead with Mal Foster? Or do we just sit and do nothing? The easy part of that answer is do nothing. Okay, and then let our grandchildren, or you know how far out this goes. This goes to possibly 10, 15 years out. Let them deal with it, which will cost them probably astronomical amount of money. And possibly there won't be the opportunity to fill that lagoon. So that creates more adverse opportunities to what are they going to do? How are they going to clean it up? It's got to be cleaned up. I think you agree with that, Councilor Topaz. I'm sure you do.
The plans I'm talking about.
Hold on, time out, Councilor Topaz. Let me interject, okay? So I want to.
I get a turn.
Yes, you get a turn after that, absolutely. But I want to interject and bring some clarity to this. Is that what Councilor Morton said was not exactly true. That we do not have toxic waste. We have waste down there that is the pulping process of the paper industry and wastewater. That is what has been in there. It is not extremely toxic, but it does need to, it's an oversized facility. That is the key point, is it is very oversized, and it is on a central waterfront, a very valuable piece of land to the citizens that can be recaptured and repurposed. That is the main focus of this. And then when Councilor Topaz is saying the process, Councilor Morton, what I hear him saying is he is following the Superfund cleanup. He's not speaking on our project. He's speaking on the Superfund cleanup, which he's collaborating as part of his project. And it does sound like it's part of our project, the way he speaks. But what I hear, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Topaz, is that you are talking about the Superfund cleanup when you were talking about the progress, that the information that you're talking about on that side of this scope of work.
That's absolutely correct, Rick.
Okay.
And the one part of the Superfund cleanup is them using our lagoon as their dumping grounds. I would think one of the things that we should try to educate the government on is turn the lagoon into a Superfund so we don't have to pay for it. But right now, the Portland Harbor is the biggest Superfund project that the government's handled.
Our sewer does not meet Superfund cleanup restrictions. It doesn't, you guys. DEQ's looked at it. It's our facility. We know that. Ask Aaron Cunners. We just gave him a 20-year. You can go down and talk to our head of our sewer, you guys. I just need to clarify that and I can't stress it enough, it
I'm
doesn't.
well aware that it doesn't meet the situation, but I'd like to talk them into it. So they pay for it. That's
would be
my
nice.
idea.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some funding for it, but there's definitely an opportunity to repurpose that. And I think we actually, with the work that's been done today, have a really good idea on the facility and what it entails and what it will take to, is it doable for further steps? The answer is yes. So, and now public engagement and furthering more studies and looking at materials. Yes, so there is so much. The Superfund cleanup site was one of the driving forces behind this. This is no secret. It just was. We also know we have some areas in our own backyard that need to be cleaned up. So, which would meet, our facility would meet two of the three for sure, being Armstrong, our in-water at Boise, and we're not sure about the old pull yard with creosote. That may be something that gets hauled away. We don't know. But we feel that it would meet two of those projects in our own backyard. And that's yet to be determined too as well, because we don't know enough. But DEQ is one who is driving and helping, and it'll be the Army Corps of Engineers, Mal Foster, the state of Oregon, the city, DEQ. Did I leave anybody else out there, an acronym out of there?
EPA is going to get into this too, so be aware the other end of the government's coming at you.
Well, yeah, then that's fine too. We're not trying to hide anything from anybody. This is part of the process, and people think we're a lot further along than what we are, and we're not. That's the facts. So,
I had a quick question, I guess clarity. Ms. Lombardi, you talked about that there'd be a hearing later and there'd be a presentation. I just wanted you to clarify the parameters of the hearing and for other people that are listening to this, so they know what is happening later today.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Carlson. So what I was alluding to is my colleagues Seth Otto and Meredith DeAndrea will be presenting later this evening during the 6 o'clock session on the brownfields assessment grant and the work that's been completed to date under that. And so they will have a presentation that's shared with council at that time.
And then I had a follow-up question based on the original criteria. Is there still public outreach? We just don't know to come, but we just don't know what that looks like in this COVID world. So there's still a public outreach component coming.
I can answer some of that, Councillor Carlson, Kathy, if you'd like. So yes, that's partially the answer, that it's been really difficult for all public agencies under COVID to bring people together for meaningful conversations. And so we are working in this current phase toward having remote engagement and opportunities for people to learn more and then provide their input in ways that really matter to the project at this stage. In future phases that are yet unfunded, but we are seeking funding for those, there would be additional public engagement throughout the process. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It does somewhat. I guess from the very beginning, long before I met either one of you two ladies, is that one of my main things is that I wanted to make sure that the citizens of our community understand this prospect and where we are in real terms. Not terms that take a lot of letters after your name, but terms that regular working folks are going to understand. So they realize that it's not wham bam, thank you ma'am, it's not done, that they really identify the risk. I had spoken to a gentleman, I said to have kind of like when you talk about sediments and you talk about waste repurposing, it's really hard for normal people that don't deal in waste management to realize all the levels of waste. And I know because I used to be a partner in a business that there's different levels, and you can equate it with types of businesses that might generate that waste. So we're talking about the parking lot at Walmart, or we're talking about this. We're not talking about Hanford, you know, just like the extremes of brown water out of your washing machine or out of your dishwasher versus something out of the back of a industry. and something that will be super easy, kind of, for lack of a better term, a kitchen table presentation that people can wrap their head around and be able to formulate questions and have time to process that, maybe in advance of a public hearing or in advance of an exchange. So people are like, oh, so then it really makes sense to them. And then they can do their own research if they choose to do so, but it might answer some of that low-hanging fruit questions. So the folks with less science background can understand, and it might open up better conversations for more meaningful questions for you guys.
Well, that's what I heard Abby talk about earlier in her presentation, was working with the city in the future and on that timeline of finding unique ways with this technology age of getting that word out there and letting people engage. So I think they answered that question.
Yeah, more exchange is better. So,
Yeah.
And I just wanted, for the record, I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, because that part went by fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And the big words happened were long and the little words were short. And I just, like, for people listening at home that may have gone and got a sandwich and missed that part, I just wanted to clarify it.
Yep.
Thank you.
That would be safe to say, though, right, Abby? That's exactly what you were talking about.
It is, Mayor Scholl, and I will tell you that in 15 years of working in construction and infrastructure, it can be really challenging to help people understand the complexity. It's complex because we deal in large and sometimes dangerous issues, right? So dealing with waste, for example. But your point is well met, Councillor Carlson, that helping people to understand the basics of the waste disposal process, what kind of waste. Much of this so there's two pieces here. One is breaking it down and helping people just really grasp that information in advance of those hearings where they're providing that substantive information. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is sorry, I lost my thought. Like I tell you, but it does. These days more than it ever has. But the other part of it is that making sure that they understand why it's complex, and they understand where they can get more information and kind of how the process plays out. Because as Kathy talked about, as I talked about, this is a really long timeline. And so a lot of the decisions about what kind of waste haven't happened yet. So we haven't decided exactly where fill will come from and when it will go in. And so that's one of the challenges too, is that making sure we don't jump that gun of making people believe that we've already decided we're doing this when we really have a lot of options and decisions yet to make.
Yep. Okay, any other questions for Kathy or Abby?
Mayor, if I can make one quick comment about the issue of project strategy here, and not getting too far ahead of ourselves and this process. And we've been very mindful of being good stewards of public resources, even though the majority of these are grant-funded type resources, but to move in a very stepwise fashion to, what's the most important issue we need to address next. All of the work we've laid out and worked on with all these agencies is, what is the what's that next step that's going to needs to be answered, and it's kind of a red light, green light kind of thing. Is it still green? And then we move forward to the next step. And that fatal flaw kind of issue is always on our mind.
Well, and by all means, citizens need to know that this work is crucially needed to be done no matter what happened, that they have a better understanding of a big chunk of waterfront property that they own. So 39 acres, just the pond itself, and the surrounding area, you're probably looking at about 80 acres with the whole surrounding. The pond itself is 39. So you're talking 80 acres of waterfront property in total. I don't want to confuse anybody. It's 39 that we're talking about, but it's 80 total if you were to take the fence to fence that we're talking about here. So, okay. Thank you, Abby and Kathy.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next item. Is an update from South County Collaborative Group. Rachel Berry.
Give me 1 second, Mayor. I'll get everyone on board here.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually believe we're going to need to reschedule the next agenda item. We have several presenters who have run up against other meetings.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your time.
Oh, that's no problem. Because we were actually those took a little bit long. Those first two went a little longer than we anticipated. That works out, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. I apologize.
Yep, good to see you.
And thank you, presenters, for your patience.
Yep. Yeah, sorry about that, presenters. Okay, so now we're going to go on to Police Department semi-annual report, Chief Greenway.
Okay, hang on one more second then.
Yep.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
So just want to give you an update on the police department in conjunction with our city strategic plan and how we're meeting our goals, some of our successes and some of our challenges moving forward. And so Matt, do you have the PowerPoint you can put up there? There you go. Okay, so as you see, this is just kind of filler here, but the police department meets 3 of our goals for our city: foster effective, efficient organization, continue to support and enhance physical environment that promotes the livability, and implementing long-term plans that identify the community's preferred vision and sustainable revenues. So we're not so much revenues, but our vision of making St. Helens a sustainable place. So an overall, our police department is this is no secret to anybody. You know, one of our areas, our challenges is to maintain, you know, a robust staffing of our department. Currently, this snapshot is in front of you is how our police department looks. We have a total of 19 sworn officers, and you can see the breakdown. We have a total of 2 non-sworn personnel. We do have a vacancy in our police support specialist position when Tia vacated. However, since the creation of this PowerPoint presentation, we did hire a part-timer to fill that role. And we've been contracting with another individual. Through our partnerships with our local agencies, we're working with CCOM, who's helping us backstop some of the work, and very grateful to Laura and Mike over at CCOM for their support and continue a seamless transition as we fill the full-time position and get that person up to speed as far as training and their duties. So go ahead, Matt. All right. So goal 1, this is where we, one of our strengths, I feel, our biggest strength that we had in the last 6 months, foster an effective and efficient organizational structure that responds to community needs. So one of our goals that we set out for the police department was to attract, hire, and retain the best employees for the St. Helens Police Department. And, you know, in the environment across our nation right now, with the demand for police reform, with the COVID, the pandemic, there's a lot of strain that we are going to feel for years down the road as far as attracting and hiring, you know, police officers. That's just a fact. You turn on the nightly news any day of the week, and the first 10 minutes are usually bad news. And lately, the first 5 minutes has been something, you know, that's pretty global and attention getting against the police. So we are not immune to feeling that strain and those challenges of staffing. So with the cooperation, you know, of the council, you were able to approve those corporal positions, and we actually filled 2 out of 3 thus far. That one of it, and I can tell you right now that we that has attracted one of our lateral hires, caused us to hire them, and it's also going to cause us to retain our employees because there's more chance for advancement. One of the challenges in a smaller agency across the nation, we're not alone on this, is that, you know, the officers continue to do the same thing over and over, and there's no room for advancement, or you have to wait for somebody to retire or something else before they get to experience any type of different work other than basic patrol work. By creating these new corporal positions, we were able to attract the people, but it also sets our department up for success in the fact that one thing that was missing is that we didn't have any succession training or succession planning. And what that simply means is that if we have a sergeant, lieutenant, chief, or somebody leave the agency, we got to have a seamless transition and move the next person up. So this gives the this is our first line supervision that we can start grooming the future leaders of our agency that will incorporate the best practices into our community for tomorrow. Additional, we had the signing bonus. I will tell you right now that we hit a home run on this as a community, is that we have retained one of the premier officers, which now is a detective in the metro area, who has already hit the ground running and has paid dividends, although I can't divulge the cases that he's working on, but it's really helping the community of St. Helens. So again, these ideas that we create, not in a vacuum, together as a community and as leadership within our government, have already in a short time paid off for us. One area that might seem kind of, you scratch your head about is the shift schedule change. And I'll tell you why that's a huge success for not only our employees, but our community. One thing about police work is that you cannot be afraid to try different things, and also not be afraid to, if it doesn't work, to put it aside and try something else. And last year we went to a 12-hour shift. The officers wanted to go to a 12-hour shift. We, reluctantly, we did. We said, okay, let's see what we could do. Maybe this will better our community. And over time, we learned a few things. One, that we were kind of short-sighted by going to 12-hour shifts, that our officers were working 12 hours. They were really wearing themselves out. We weren't producing the best possible product for our community. We were missing some areas. So your leadership team here met with the union, and we changed our schedules to 10-hour shifts. So we have our officers working 4 10-hour shifts. And what this means is that we will have an overlap now that affords us the opportunity to do more training, respond better to our community and their needs, and also get the downtime that these officers need to decompress, refresh, and then come back the next day instead of working 12 hours, going home, possibly getting 5, 6 hours sleep, and then coming right back to it. That's absolutely not what we want to do. We want to put the best product out there to serve our community. So those are just 3 examples. The training of our employees, again, this is an area with everything going on in the news that we've been discussing, and we've implemented some new programs within the St. Helens Police Department within the last 6 months that reflect this. We have entered an agreement with a company called Police One Training. With the global pandemic, all training has been shut down. It's not happening, and yet we're still mandated to continue our certifications. And also, this is an opportunity because we do have to kind of pull back on our officers on their proactivity and their interaction with the public to slow the spread of the virus. So they do have a lot more downtime. So we went onto a web-based training program where these officers now can get web-based training anywhere if they have internet connectivity. The good thing about this program, it was at a minimal cost. It is already paid dividends. We have the ability to direct training that these officers have to take certain trainings. One of the first classes that I mandated was de-escalation training. So our officers can understand and get a refresher course. And they are doing that now. This also gives them the ability to meet the certification requirements in conjunction with reality-based training. This is not just strictly our guys go and do computer training and watch a video and everything's hunky-dory. That's not the case. This is an enhancement for the reality-based training that we do give them every year, and we're going to increase that to a couple times a year. Next year, we'll be doing it twice a year. We are just about to do our reality-based training on contact cover and some tactical things to keep our officers safe. Along those lines, this Police One training program also has the ability that we can use an inventory system for our sensitive items here at the police department. One area that we really fell short on in the St. Helens Police Department is that we have a rudimentary way of keeping track of our sensitive items, and that was concerning to me. So now this program affords us the ability to track our sensitive items, as well as put notifications, for example, on Narcan. If each officer is carrying Narcan, it has a shelf life of 2 years. We will then get an email to the administration team as a 30-day warning, letting us know when this stuff's expiring, so we can be ahead of the curve and not have to worry at the last minute saying, oh, our Narcan's expired. We want to, again, give our community the best possible product that we can put out there. The reality-based training, I touched on it a little bit. Reality-based training is basically scenarios where officers run through our training cadre, and they are put through a variety of scenarios with, I guess, role players as you would. This is by hands down the best training available to any officer out there. This is real-time training. We take all the safety precautions. This puts them in an environment where they have to make a split-second decision, de-escalate, various tools they use, talk their way out of incidents. And this is something that, like I said, we are going to increase this to twice a year. I'd like to do it more than that, but due to our staffing concerns, this is an area that we will continue to improve upon. Even reality-based training, standing alone, although it's the best I believe that's out there, we also need to use it in concert with the web-based training and other training programs that are out there. Speaking of training, and I'll tell you this right now, and I don't know if everybody's heard this, due to Governor Brown police reforms, she has cut the funding for the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, basically the Oregon Police Academy, and they are not running any basic police academies until July of 2021, next year. So this is going to really challenge all agencies across Oregon. It's gonna challenge us as well. We actually have a sworn position vacancy right now, which we are about to put out for advertisement, but we're going to do a lateral hire for this. And hopefully the programs that you have all supported us on will be able to attract good candidates that we have in the past. So July 2021, they turn the switch back on, and they start running basic police academies through Salem Police, the police training facility. The challenge is there are 174 police departments in the state of Oregon alone. So you can imagine over a year since they've shut this down, the waiting list to get new hires in to get certified. So this is going to be a challenge for us. I've already talked to our leadership team here and some of the staff on maybe coming up with innovative ways of even attracting more lateral applicants to our pool of officers that we have now. One of the areas that we've been working on for our organizational structure is policy updates. Again, nothing to hide, police reform is needed. I am a big proponent of police reform. I'm a big proponent of standardization and systems. But prior to the Oregon laws being implemented on police reform, we already started looking at our police policies, specifically our use of force, to ensure that we have the best practices and we're putting the best product out there, which I rest assured, folks, we are. One area that we did change is we totally removed the chokehold, the carotid artery hold, unless deadly force is authorized. The good news is that in doing some research, that tactic wasn't used in over 10 years. So that's a good thing. So we are ahead of the curve, in my belief, as far as keeping up with the best practices, not only from our Department of Justice, but from our governor's mandates, and also former President Obama's 8 pillars of policing and police reform. Just to refresh everybody's memory, I just got some notes here, sorry. The 4 law changes that occurred in June of this year basically was the tear gas. Only agencies can use tear gas as a riot control agent only after a riot has been declared. There was a ban on chokeholds unless it was a deadly force situation. Misconduct database that the Department of Public Training and Public Safety maintains. So our citizens in the state of Oregon can log on to the DPSSD site and see what officers have misconduct. And that's I feel that that's a good move, and that's transparency for the public we serve, specifically St. Helens. And also there was a duty to report and intervene by our officers at any time. We have implemented more stringent policies than were required by the state. We already had these policies in place, but we identified them in several areas within our policy manual. We also went as far as that there would be no retaliatory action taken if an officer reports misconduct and that alleged misconduct doesn't rise to the level of misconduct. There won't be any type of retaliatory punishment for that officer who made that complaint in good faith. We want to ensure that our employees feel safe and comfortable to report any police misconduct, because You know, the old adage, I've said this 100 times, nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop, because it really sets us back in policing many years. Another area that we're moving forward with is a Reserve Academy partnership with the Hillsborough Police Department. The Hillsborough Police Department and us are partnering together to run a Reserve Police Academy together. This is a win-win for both agencies. Joe Hogue, who's head up this for many years and using his local contacts, Joe's been instrumental in getting this off the ground. And so instead of just kind of working in a bubble or a vacuum, we're going to now partner with a reputable agency. They will have share the burden with instructors, with the facilities, with lesson plans. So it'll able to even enhance our ability even further. Sadly, one of the challenges that we encountered with this is that working with Kathy Payne, she's a rock star and she's helped us with advertising this. We only had one person put in for the Reserve Academy, one application. Again, going back to the challenges we are going to continue to face in this profession is we struggle with attracting people we're going to pay to do those jobs. So can you imagine the challenges we're going to face with people who are volunteering their time? So we are going to reopen this back up, use our officers to go out there in the community. Our officers and our employees of the St. Helens Police Department are on the front lines. They encounter individuals who they feel might be a good fit for starting off at the Reserve Academy. So we'll be looking forward to that, and hopefully we get more applicants and we can use those resources to kind of augment our current full-time staffing levels. Matt, next slide, please. So goal 3, we're going to continue to support and enhance physical environment that promotes livability and the safety for our community. Okay, so no secret that we are embarking on the possibility of a new police station, public safety facility. This is spearheaded. I cannot take credit for this. I would have to say Matt Brown is actually the engine behind this this endeavor, and he has worked countless hours along with Rachel Berry and the council, Keith Locke, John Walsh, of getting this moving. So just this week, and I'll try to, Matt, if you can indulge me, I'll try to make this as simple as possible. So we know we need a new police station. I mean, that's a given. That's, you know, we will do our best to, anybody wants to come down and see what we work in. It's getting to the point where it's going to be more cost effective to kind of keep this place running with all the regulations than, you know, if we just built a new one and we're able to expand. So we're in the process of forming a public safety facility ad hoc committee. And what this means is that we went to the community to apply, and we are looking for individuals in the community who would be able to come together, get some training and some insight of why we need this new police station, and get some direction of how we're going to fund this. Now, this committee strictly is just for funding. This first committee. This is not design. This is not, we need an office here. This is not we want to change the policy on the driving policy. This is strictly how are we going to fund the new police station. So tonight you're going to see some applications, if I'm correct, Matt, where you guys are going to vote or approve on the citizens who are so graciously volunteering their time to be part of this new station, and you'll be able to see those applicants. So in a nutshell, without divulging too much, is it going to be a property tax? Is it going to be a utility fee? This is up for the ad hoc committee to make a recommendation to the council. Hopefully in December. We're looking to kick this off in October with some presentations to this committee, November some presentations to the committee, and then the recommendation to the council to make the final decision of how you want to move forward as far as if you want to move forward to the community, how we can fund this. In an interim, we've been, Matt, myself, Rachel, Joe Hogue, we've been visiting other agencies, newly built police departments, as well as ones in the process of seeing how they have, how their outlay of their facility is. But more importantly was how did they fund this? How did they incorporate the public and get the public, you know, to buy off on this? And without weigh-in, you will never have the public's buy-in. So that's why I think this ad hoc committee is really a good thing for approving this new facility. One of the things about the new facility is it's not going to be police eccentric. And what I mean by that is our plans is to have a community room that the community can also use. I know that's one of the areas that is challenging out here in St. Helens, is that we always don't have the availability of community meeting rooms, safe places, and this new public safety facility will offer just that. Similar to what the library does, to what CCOM does with their meeting room, we will be able to reduce the burden on these other entities within our community. And also, it's a good way, it's a good icebreaker for us to get to know the community better when they come to the station we're having a meeting instead of other issues that they might be a victim of a crime or such. One of the areas that I talked about in January was reducing our traffic safety and traffic accidents by 5%, dedicating more officers to be proactive enforcement and citizen concerns. This goes in line with our schedule change. Because we have overlapping schedules now, we are able to be more proactive out there. And although this might sound elementary, and I have to tell this to the officers on a routine basis, we get frequent calls from citizens in the community who have a complaint about speeding down the street or basketball hoops or whatnot. This the schedule change affords us the opportunity for our officers to actually make contact with those residents in that 2-hour overlap, where we have officers, answering the 911 calls when they come up, but also be receptive and responsive to the community needs. 9 times out of 10, it's just a perception issue. And but the takeaway that I have gotten from this is that our community continues to be appreciative that they actually have an officer following up in person and listening to their concerns. This is an old adage again. You can drive home tonight after the meetings, and you more than likely will not be a victim of a violent crime in the city of St. Helens. However, you could be a victim of any type of traffic accident. So this is why it's important that we reduce these traffic accidents, because everybody nowadays drives to their jobs, this grocery store. So this is a heightened awareness of you. We have small children in the area, so I am big on traffic safety, and the officers continue to carry that message to our community and make sure that we have the safest community in Oregon. Along the lines is that we also, because of the global pandemic, we were challenged when it first kicked off. I mentioned this to Mayor Scholl this week. I was very impressed with our city. We were one of the first cities, and if I'm correct, in the state of Oregon, to actually take the action to put processes in place, declaring a state of emergency, declaring things of that nature to keep our public safe. And then shortly after, other cities followed suit. I'm very proud of that, if I can say that, because it takes a lot of courage to make decisions that are unpopular. But again, the leaders of this city, they do what's necessary. So we're not immune to that. We had to partner with the Columbia County Emergency Management. Steve Pegram is a great man. We've been liaisoning with him, continuing our PPE equipment, seeking COVID-19 safety protocols. One thing that continues regardless is that people still need the police. That is a fact. So we do not have the luxury of just social distancing when, at all times, although we encourage our officers to. So that was one of in the last 6 months that we continue to enhance and promote safety for our community. So going back, Will, I want to touch on something that we mentioned in this new police station thing. So people ask me, they say, well, why would you, be concerned with a new public safety or police station in the state of the nation right now with the anti-law enforcement sentiment that some people feel is out there? But I go back to January, where your police department had an over 90% approval rating from our citizens, and I stand by that. Once in a while, we do get a complaint, and we investigate and everything, but overall, the support of our community, our city council, our residents, our partner agencies has been nothing short of phenomenal. This is the first time in my 33 years of law enforcement experience I've ever seen an approval rating for a police agency over 90%. I agree that we should take advantage of this, strike when the iron's hot. I have a feeling, if I can be so bold to say this, that we will be successful in getting this new police station. So next slide, Matt. And I'm wrapping it up here for everybody. So a couple challenges we have. Goal 5, review, support, implement long-term plans, identify the preferred vision, sustainable revenues. We were not immune from COVID, okay? I am big on intelligence-led policing and hotspot policing. And to kind of break that down, what that means for everybody is there are crimes that occur in St. Helens, and there are crimes that occur in certain areas of St. Helens. Instead of us continuing to go to the hot spots, as I call them, what are we doing to fix the problem? Have we done everything we possibly can? Have we talked to the property owners? Have we met with the business owners? Have we, are we out there at the right times? So in conjunction with CCOM, Laura Mizzarelli and Mike Fletcher, in March this year, we had 2 of our employees that were scheduled for a conference to go there with CCOM and find a company that can provide us the software for hotspot policing. Right now, CCOM, City St. Helens, and I can speak for this with confidence, no agency within the Columbia County has the ability to extrapolate the crime data that we need to determine where our hotspots, where our police are needed, so to speak. We have anecdotal evidence. I can tell you right now, Gable and 30 is our #1 accident intersection. Me saying that does not shock any of you. You know that. It's just it's a high volume intersection, but we need empirical data that shows us so we can not only put our officers at the right time in there, but we can also see how we could, the disbursement of crime. And, because once you put police in an area, and I can tell you this, you put a police car at Gable and 30, you'll get vehicles that will slow down for 3 miles. That's been studies. And then they start speeding up again because they don't see a police officer or a cop, as you would. Same thing with crime. If we have hotspot policing, so we have to start putting the foundation for future years down the road when St. Helens, increases in population, we have the baseline of this hotspot policing for intelligence-led policing. And that helps us track criminals, track crime, reduce crime. Our whole goal is to reduce crime and prevent crime. I do not like responding to crime. I don't. I want to prevent it. I want to reduce it. And this is one of the tools. So COVID has basically hindered us in getting this information. So what does that mean for, I'd like to sit here and say, hey, I am down 5% in traffic accidents. I am down 5% in crime. I can't sit in front of you today, council, and the citizens, I can't tell you that because we don't have that ability right now. CCOM doesn't have the staffing. They don't have the programs to, like I said, to extrapolate that, but we're working towards that. One area that we will have, though, is through the FBI NIBRS information. Every year I put out an annual report. NIBRS is a national incident reports-based system where the FBI requires us to report our crimes to them in a category that breaks it down. I'm not trying to confuse anybody. So about February or March of next year, I will get that information from our region database and then be able to measure it at that point. The challenge that we have is that's yearly. I'm looking for a 28-day picture snapshot of our crime in St. Helens so we can address it, implement programs or policing models that will tell us if it's working or not. And if it is working, are we displacing the crime? Where to? So it's a lot of kind of moving parts for this, but all I can tell you sitting in front of here is that COVID has got us in that sense is that we just have to wait until we're able to get back and get that database in there. We are still out there. We are still proactive in the community. We do have to be very cautious on our proactivity. We work with the Columbia County Sheriff's Office. We cannot, simply pull somebody over with a warrant and take them to jail, so to speak. And I say that because we cannot introduce COVID into the jail because that would cause us more issues. So there's times when we just have to, do our job and prevent crime. But our officers are still out there. By no means are they any less visible. In fact, they're more visible out there in the community, which I'm a big believer in reducing crime and making St. Helens the safest place to live in Oregon. I already mentioned the police facility plans with the community room. That's huge. And we continue our partnership, a strong partnership with Scott Stockwell, Stacy Mendoza. I just talked to her this week with the school district. Our officers, we still have SROs. I know that across the nation, a lot of jurisdictions are removing school resource officers from their jurisdictions for whatever reason. Scott Stockwell reassured me that is not the case here in the St. Helens School District. I wholeheartedly support that decision because I believe that our officers need to be embedded in those schools. so they can make those relationships that pay dividends down the road. You know, as our hopefully our kids remain in the community, and we make those relationships that Mayor Scholl, that you have with and then Joe has about knowing people. And I think that's important that we interact in that sense. So moving forward, again, we're going to continue with the police station. We've got a lot of things up in the air in motion, I would say. But I will tell you that I am very proud of the officers and the agency. I'm very proud of this community, the citizens, especially the support they give us. I was over in the main police station today. We have a wall of thank you cards that are addressed to the officers, an actual wall, if you ever get a chance to see it, which kind of takes you back, not to be all sappy and everything, but sometimes our officers, we have to support them. They see the news every day. They're not immune to what's going on. However, the community in this is a fantastic city, a fantastic community, and they appreciate your support. So I would be happy to entertain any questions, comments, or concerns. I'm sorry I spoke a little bit fast. I know the meeting's going long, and I wanted to get in before the mayor's break. So
You did too. You got it in just before my break.
Okay.
Any questions? That's not a bad thing.
I like it. Thank you. Again, from the bottom of my heart, as corny as that sound, thank you, council, and thank you to the citizens and the staff for your support, your continuing support. I know on occasion we have a few challenges. We have speed bumps, but we somehow seem to get past it, and we're just very appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yep. So now we're going to go ahead and take a little break.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes.
If I can interject, we were going to show you the list of the ad hoc committee for approval tonight and go through that for just a couple minutes, if that's okay, before the break, since we're talking about PD right now.
Yeah. Can we are we going to do it and vote on it later?
It's up to you. We were anticipating just going over the list with you during the work session and then you approving it at the evening meeting. But if you would like to do both in the evening meeting, that's perfectly fine too. Or if you want to wait till after the break.
Yeah, let's do it after the break.
Okay.
Yes, because we have 3 more items on our agenda, which I'm sure are going to take a little bit of time. So let's go ahead and just take let's resume. Is 6 minutes okay with everybody? 3:30? 3:30. I gotta use the bathroom. Take you use the bathroom, get a drink. See you in 6 minutes.
Hey, Matt, this is Bill.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, I noticed that you took my picture off. That's okay with me. I just didn't want you to think I did it.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine.
Okay, I'm still here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So Rick, did you want to go through the ad hoc committee stuff right now, or do you want to do that in the evening?
Let's do it in the evening because I actually have, my son needs a ride at 4 and I might have to cut out early and turn it to Doug. Hoping my wife can sneak away from work, but no guarantees. He's got driver's education. But looking at the agenda, I didn't think we'd be this long into this. That's all right. It's all good stuff that we needed to go over. Okay, so let's see who we got here. I see Jenny. I see Topaz. I see Doug, but he's silent.
Yeah, they may just have their video turned off.
Yep. And I did make it clear, so. Okay, welcome back. And I see Jenny there, so why don't you go ahead and unmute her, and we're gonna have her and Shauna do a discussion.
Do you want to skip are you skipping the tourism?
Oh, no, I'm not. Discussion, you see, we are way far behind. Okay, regarding tourism coordination RFP. I was trying to.
Well, hey, it's your meeting.
All right, you ready to get going with this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the tourism RFP was something that was carried forward from last meeting, which was carried forward from the beginning of the year on a discussion to talk about it in 6 months. And at the last meeting, we talked about, or what we heard anyway, was a concern about the auditing controls and the current personal services agreement that we have, not necessarily the process, but just in the agreement that we currently have with E2C is the ability to audit. So I kicked that over to their legal counsel. They took a look at it and really kind of confirmed what staff thought as far as we have a pretty high degree of control to audit the records. And so the question to the council is, where do we want to go from here? Is there concern about, I mean, do you want to go through an RFP process? You know, and that's sometimes not a small endeavor. The last time we did it, we had a number of applicants that clearly didn't fully understand the process or the scope of work, the level of effort that's involved, and at least that level of effort that E2C provides to the city.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on that. I know we have one candidate who thought they could manage it from California and have volunteers run it while they were in California. That was one example of who applied. Also,
that clearly in my mind would have been a complete disaster to take that risk and move to that person. So,
yep.
But,
I think at this time with what's going on in around just the country, it's a bad time to put out an RFP for this. So I'm happy with the way things are going right now.
Could we see a copy of the audit system? And I agree with you, Keith, it's not really the time to do anything, but could we get a copy so we could read it that the staff has come up with?
The audit system. So let me perhaps compare it to other things that we audit. And there's a general city audit that we do. There's things like, the hotel motel tax or the cannabis tax that the city has full right and control to be able to audit. And what that audit involves often is someone savvy to it, like finance director or myself, coming into the organization and looking at their books, going through their books, and not necessarily. And sometimes, in some cases, it's there's civil penalty assessed against the auditor to take those documents and make them public record. When we put them internally, have them subject to a public record request, would put the person that does the auditing up to some personal liability there. So there's this, you're trusting your financial officials to audit those records. This isn't quite like that, but it's in that same vein that you want to be respectful of the contractors' private documents.
Policy on this, though. I mean, I'm looking for the written policy, whatever it is. As compared, why do I do this or that today or something tomorrow? I mean, I'm looking for the written policy of what an audit would be and how it would be conducted, what materials were private, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you're talking about the general, the gas kind of audit standards, I believe. I think Matt could probably chime in on that as far as the audit process. So we have we have a city auditing firm that audits the books every year.
Yeah, I can just quickly jump in. So we've are on, I believe, year 3 or 4, I believe 4 now, of our current contract with our current provider for audit services. They come in usually 2 or 3 times a year. One time is the kind of the big audit where they ask for a bunch of stuff and give me a laundry list of invoices, accounts payable, accounts receivable, revenue items that they review as far as our utility billing, all of our utility billing accounts they review. But that audit is available on our city website, and that audit is available for all of the previous years, technically going back to the...
I was more interested in the agreement with the auditing company, what they're going to do, not what they did, but what they're going to do.
I'm happy to send you a copy of the contract that includes their scope. if you would like that, yeah, I could. I believe that's probably in the realm of Kathy. Could probably email that or give you a paper copy in your box.
I'm interested, but I'm more interested. This is what we say we're going to do. I didn't care whether you did it, but I want to see, this is what we're going to do with this group of vendors. Okay, the auditors are going to do that. I just want to see that we have an official agreement with how we're going to carry this out.
Yep, either Kathy or myself can make sure that is in your box.
Thank you.
I had a question or comment or inquiry. I'm not sure what bin it goes in. Because of COVID, this has been a very strange year, and I would feel better if we had some kind of parameter going forward, because the original contract is based on conditions that no longer exist and haven't existed for 7 months. So I just would like to know where we're going forward. I mean, if we're going to talk about the RFP, I want to talk about what does this look like? And it doesn't have to happen today, but it's like, we need to have more conversation, you know, and it kind of goes on the back of what Sherry Stewart said about having a PR presence in our community year round, not just 1 month of the year. I just think there's more conversation to be had. And I know E2C has been doing a lot more than just pumpkins for quite a while. And maybe this is something for John's report at a later date to really outline what to expect, so we have measurables so they know how to answer citizens in the community of what we're doing. If we're not doing Halloween, then what? And if Halloween's going to look different, what else? Just so then they know what to expect, so it's not a surprise from week to week. It'd be super cool to have some kind of setup thing rather than just totally random.
And just, I would say in that agreement somewhere that we could automatically, even though there was a self-furlough, that we can automatically furlough if needed under basis that events can't happen or should not happen because of pandemics to weather conditions to whatever.
Disasters of not of our making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we could do some outlining of stuff without, you know, we saw in the hiring process of other things that during a pandemic's not a good time to go out looking for new talent. But we can kind of line up our ducks a little bit better. And maybe John can work on that and have that on the agenda in the future, because we're kind of hitting him out of left field here today to have him produce that right this second.
Yep.
Yeah, certainly think there's more room for communication. The general, you know, the premise of the agreement is the revenues will equal the expenditures. It's a balanced approach. So if the E2C feels like the revenues aren't going to be there, they're going to make the changes to reduce the expenditures as best they can, and still perform those core events as far as, you know, Halloween and 4th of July and Christmas ships and 13 nights.
Yep.
But yeah, citizens, local businesses would like to know before they see it in the middle of the street. That's all. It's like, we want to know that, you know, we tentatively, I mean, lots of events have been canceled, moved out, and reframed. But it's like just a strategy or monthly updates or whatever, that forecasting kind of thing, as opposed to, I have no idea, it'll be something. You know,
because this wasn't really an action item, I think we could go ahead and direct staff to if everybody's in agreement with that, and it sounds like we are, just to go ahead and wipe that and come back and visit that later.
I agree.
Yep. Okay. Council President Morton, head shake. Yep. Thumbs up. Okay. All right. So, all right, we're going to go on to our next item of on our agenda is discussion regarding status of youth council. And Council President Morton, I may have to sneak out of here at about, if I don't get a text from my wife here shortly, at about 10 to 4, and I'm gonna have you take over, okay?
Yeah. Doug, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I just, regarding the youth council, before Shauna or Matt says anything, I kind of reached out to them because, you know, when we started youth council, Keith Locke and I did it together, and we did it in City Hall. But now with COVID and Keith's retirement, I just, you know, we need staff support, and the kids need a broader base. And so this idea of is not about diminishing their role or diminishing the leadership opportunities. It's about supporting the leadership opportunities and making it more inclusive for our community. It is in no way designed to lessen their importance, lessen their impact, and lessen their leadership. I think people got way out in left field and thought I was trying to diminish them. And that is not my goal. Because the kids are ages 6th grade through high school, that's a broad base, and I bear, and I think City Council and the city bears some responsibility for their safety and for all things that go on in that parameter. When we started Youth Council, we did not have a partnership with the school district. We did not have set up to have everybody have background checks. And I think having this housed, you know, at least in part with Shauna's department means they'll have more staff support. It means that anybody they interact with will have a criminal background check. So we're making sure that those parents will feel comfortable leaving that 12-year-old for leadership development. I think just randomly here and there with who knows what councils assigned is not saying to the citizens or the students that we care enough about leadership in our community. And so that was where the conversation went between Shauna and I, is about, it's been 6 years, it's time to get serious about really moving leadership forward for youth in our community. So it's not meant to diminish or lessen. And it's also, in the last 6 years, now we can look, and there's many other communities that have youth council, and we can learn lessons from other communities around Oregon, and we can do better. So I just don't want anybody to think that we're trying to diminish them, lessen them, or put them on the back burner. It's quite the opposite. So I just wanted to have that preface, is that this wasn't an idea that Shauna and Matt or anybody cooked up. It was something that came out of my work with the youth for the last few years, is trying to elevate their work to a better place and to be more inclusive in our community. So Shauna had some comments that she had prepared for the group, but I just wanted to have kind of that lead in to where we were.
Awesome, thank you, Jenny. So as Jenny said, with the Youth Council, we would like to keep the structure a lot the same as it is now, with having different roles that they have in the community. I've been looking at different programs that they have throughout the state, and I'm interested in creating a multi-layered team type program, one that has a youth advisory council, which the youth council that would take that role. A teen scene that would be more of like an after school type of thing, where teens have a safe place to go and hang out, a teen service corps, and a counselor in training. So there will be several different roles that people can pick and kind of pick from that menu what works best for their teen and what their interests are. With the youth council or the youth action council, we still would have expectations that they fill out a application each year. And they are doing volunteer opportunities, as well as being a part of our boards and commissions and council meetings. And we'll talk about what that all looks like once we have a better plan. One of my thoughts is that having the Youth Advisory Committee have a strategic plan for the year and the goals that they're working towards, so that they have those measurable things. Some of the things in it could be recreation programs. They could help plan our sports leagues, our events. I know they really like to do different events, and having a house with the rec program could be a really great fit for that. I just really think that we could help elevate that council even more than it is now. I think that Keith and Jenny have done an amazing job with it, and I've been able to sit in on several meetings and be on some projects throughout the 6 years. And so I'm really excited to be a part of that. And it's always been one of my focuses with the rec program, and just as a community member, is really giving the teens a safe place to be, that they're using their skills and also building other skills. So as far as diminishing it where it's not going to be something that's still advocating for our city and our youth, I feel like it would even elevate it more and give it some more opportunities. I do have a really great partnership, well, the city does, but I'm in the schools a lot, so I'm able to talk to those youth and get them, to be a part of the youth council. I think that our youth need that supervision as well as structure, and also having something that is by teens for teens. So I can be there kind of like the bumpers at a bowling alley, but not necessarily have to be the one that is initiating the project. Like that would still be their baby to do. And I would just be there to help support that. And if I have to, you know, work out partnerships or get sponsors or things like that, I can do that. So I was excited to give the opportunity when Jenny came to talk to us, just to see if that would be something we'd be interested in kind of being the structure for. And yeah, so I'm very interested. I know Matt prepared kind of a document that was in the packet today that had a little bit, some bullet points in there, but I just really want to let you guys know that it wouldn't just be planning events for the recreation program or sports leagues and stuff. It also would be, I really like to see the youth sit on some of our commissions and boards, and maybe even like the school board or other ones in the community, and then come back and report to us like what's going on and what issues they see or what they would like to see. So I think that's all I have for me. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm more than willing to answer them. Yes, Doug.
Yeah, you know, when I first of all, I've got to applaud Keith and Jenny for getting the Youth Council going and off the ground. And one of the things that I was always impressed with was my experience going back to the National League of Cities convention in Seattle and sitting through 2 days of family in government. And a big part of that was youth councils. Now, one of the things that I thought was effective there was most of those kids who were there talking about their experiences were more focused in terms of age group. And what Ginny alluded to earlier is that the scope of what Keith and Ginny were dealing with was a wide spectrum of ages and whatever. I mean, I looked at that and I go, this is almost impossible to focus on something that's really concrete and really going to be, you know, dynamite effective. And I feel that in teaming with the educational community, that in leadership, they also do leadership activities in the high school for student government, that kind of thing. And to put a 6th or 7th grader into that position to have to, no matter how mature they are, to have the wisdom to come and sit next to a council member or sit on a commission is really tough. It's really asking a lot. And I just think that the youth council is more suited for a group of the element of kids who are 15, 16, and 17, maybe sophomores or juniors going into their senior year, to have that experience of leadership so that they can get a broader view of what leadership is, and hopefully take it back to the schools, take it back to their churches, take it back to any kinds of activities that they're involved in, and utilize it. To me, this is to the city council, the city youth council would be the pinnacle of leadership. It would be something that the older kids would shoot for. So that's my take on it. And it's a very narrow vision, but the focus could be, if we're more focused on an age group and teachers in the high school possibly that we can work with as well, we have, I think it can be much more effective. We could organize it like a, don't get me wrong, but like a sports program where you have a JV and a varsity, and the JV would be junior high type of kids, and the varsity would be more two different levels. I just see that as easing the burden on whoever is going to try to manage this. I I just looked at it and I go, oh my gosh, Keith and Jenny, you know, how you guys kept those guys afloat and what you did with them was remarkable. And but the scope was you had to reach, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had to reach to different levels and different kinds of age groups. And so that's, you know, that's my opinion about how we could be very successful to start with the youth council.
I just wanted to have a follow-up. Up until this year, the past few years, we've always had the upperclassmen kind of take those leadership roles and mentor. And those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders come in and can barely form a sentence to answer a question. But by the time they're a junior, they're speaking in front of a school board. They're leading a petition. They're one of the people that attended our youth council was one of the leaders in the Black Lives Matter march down here at the city council at the Plaza Square. So, I mean, I think that we, you know, it's their future and it's their lives, and usually the less mature folks kind of weed themselves out. I like the mentorship avenue. There are a lot of leadership opportunities at high school. One thing that is unique to the city youth council is it is particulate on our city, not particulate on where you're enrolled. So we have kids that are in the Christian school, kids that go to school in Scappoose, kids that are homeschooled, but they live within our city. And so we are offering as a city a leadership opportunity that doesn't rely on them being in the right group or going to the right school. It's an opportunity that some of those kids would never have. So, I mean, it is different than like ASB staff or honor society staff. But I mean, it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I just mean that it's a lot of people have grown a lot of ways. I have written letters of recommendation for several of our graduates that have gone on to college, that have gone on to win national awards, and that have gone on to get wonderful jobs in their career post-college. So I mean, to underestimate what this role has played, it's not 50 kids, but to me, if I made a difference in one graduate's life a year, that's worth the investment to me. You know, for a couple hours a month, that was worth the investment to me. If I changed that kid's life, if I was another positive influence in that kid's life, you know, because the parents can't do it all, the teachers can't do it all. It takes a community. So, but that's where we've been. And I mean, Keith started the concept with the younger kids, and I don't know why he went so young, but, you know, for whatever reason, those 12, 13, 14-year-olds have nothing to do in this town. They have no driver's license, and all they want is independence. And maybe that's why it resonated, because 12 and 13-year-olds are looking for something.
Well, and I think that's one of the important things on here is with the multi-layered teen programs, there will be other opportunities where the youth council did fit a big gap that was out here, but now we'll have other things like we had the middle school after school program that we were doing before everything with COVID. I love the idea of having younger aged groups, you know, that are starting to learn about that and dip their toes in it with the older kids mentoring, but the older kids have their own groups that they can, you know, do different things. Even in our Sharp after school program, that's K through 5th grade, we're teaching leadership skills during that. And so kind of like, you know, just doing that. So I think having the multi-layered where maybe the Youth Advisory Council is the top layer of that group. And then we have, you know, the things that stack below all the way to just an open teen program where they can just come and hang out and play pool if that's what they want to do. You know, they don't have to, you know, and just kind of a menu item for everyone to be able to do. But I think the Youth Council has fit a really big need out here for youth to have something to do because there hasn't been a lot. And so that's why there's so much interest from the youngers too. But I think we could do like a junior youth advisory committee too. I think that, or a council, I think that would be a wonderful idea.
I'm going to jump in with a kind of a different view of this. When I was a kid and I was 12 years old, I could get a job. You can't do that now. When I was a kid, mother was home, and that's not true now. We really do need places for kids of many ages to be. The second part of it is you don't learn to be a leader in 2 days. You learn by watching and by steps, as you call it, Shauna, the multi-steps, the many steps to go in to be there. The other thing that happens in this is you learn to be with people. We don't have a whole lot of chance to be with people in this town, kind of as a free group, which this youth group does. Yes, the older ones could end up in the council, but we need to show people that you can do that. You also have to show people there's other things to do and there's steps to getting there. I'm definitely for a multi-group and enlarge it. It may mean we need more people than you, Shauna, to run it. But we don't have very much to help kids from, quote, a younger age to get older just because the way society's changed. So we've got to do something for these kids in any number of ways. If it's halfway structured, it's really, really good. So I push it as a real go. Yeah, the older kids can do better things. They can reach the top shelf. Even I can't do that. But there are things that young kids can't do and old kids can do. But the young kids got to learn it's going to take time to do that. And you're only going to do that with a as you call it, a multifaceted group or multi-step group.
And selfishly, you know, these are the kiddos that I hire for my summer staff. So I like to have them in our programs because they get kind of a taste of what it's like to have 30 children running around crazy and trying to wrangle all them. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And I think some great leadership skills have already been obtained with the youth council, but I think that we could even dig deeper and just make this even a better program or a more structured one where they do have strategic goals throughout the year and then can see measurable, like, you know, we wanted to do that and this is how we'll have success with that and that sort of thing. So again, not taking away from anything Jenny and Keith have done because they've done amazing.
And with Jenny and Keith have been great on this, but I need to hear from Keith and Jenny about what they have, what their ideas are for the council members. If Keith is going away, after, you know, in several months, and Jenny, I don't know if you're going to take the helm on the youth council in the next session or whatever. What's your take on the future of this as it affects the council?
Well, for me, what I've told the kids, because we've talked about this for the last 3 months, I said, no matter what happens, I will not quit that group. I think kids have enough people quitting on their life. And I said, I will not quit their group and I will be there for them. And we will make this bigger and better and more dynamic than it ever was. And because we'll have more help and more community support and more connections. And that was always Keith and I's dream from the very get-go. From way back when it was Keith Locke and Keith Mewson and I, that was our dynamic dream from the very beginning. But without staff support, you know, ongoing and the connection with the school district, it's just not sustainable as a city councilor to do all this alone. And so that's why it's so vital to have Shauna and her connections and the school district connections and just to broaden our footprint, because clearly there's a demand, because I don't know how many seniors I've graduated out of this and the kids just keep coming. So, you know, it is what it is, you know, it fills a need. And I think that as much as the kids like coming, I think there's more kids out there that don't know this opportunity exists. And I want to make sure that I think partnering with Shauna and the REC program is going to mean we're going to find those kids and they're going to find us. And that's my number one goal, is that, you know, kids have all kinds of issues at home and parents have issues and families need help in our community at all levels. And whatever I can do to help that in whatever capacity. So, I mean, Keith has kind of stepped back and I've just consulted with him because of our schedules and the COVID and all that stuff. But, you know, we've not missed a connection for a few years now. And it's like, I just feel like that's my other little family. So it's just, I would not.
Good for you. Good for you. Applause to, you know, kudos to you for wanting to stick with it and moving forward. Very much appreciated by myself, and I'm sure the fellow council members.
Oh, just as a heads up, just I'm going to add this kind of place marker here. It's not specifically youth council related, but when we ask youth to participate in government, we have to remember that they're students and it's difficult for them to participate at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So, I mean, I think that's kind of a barrier to reporting back. I think having Sean as a staff person will help connect those dots for things during the school day. And because youth council always meets on the weekend or in the evening, and it will help things connect back to staff to know what's really happening, you know, from school to city work day, back to their meeting.
Well, I would like to see them. This is just me personally. I'm just sitting here thinking, and I think the youth are our future for sure. In my opinion, I'd love to see term limits on Congress, and I think the youth definitely needs to step up. I would love to see a whole different demographic take place as far as elections and charters, and them learn Robert's Rule of Order, them to get plugged in on exactly how this machine runs, and somebody taking minutes, being the recorder like Kathy Payne. That's a good job in the future. A treasurer, Matt Brown. I would like to see so much more at that level if they were willing to take it to that and empower them and back them on some of their things, but also allow them to be their own little entity. And whether they had elections through the school, you know, maybe a nine board. You don't want to get too many more than that because that's just out in the weeds. But you can have committees, activity committees that bring it to the youth council like we do. Allow them to start learning this stuff at a younger age so they are comfortable enough to come in and go to Salem and present something if they need to. They want to have that voice. They can go there and know how to do it properly and have the right terminology in order to do that. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of room for this youth council to grow. And that's what I would like to see personally. I mean, if we're really talking about it, I would like to and keep biases out. Let the children make their policies and find their way. You can correct them legally, but don't guide them in any way, shape, or form. Let them direct it. See where they go with it. I think we might be amazed.
So I guess the ask is to move forward in partnering with the rec program is the agenda item.
Yeah, I mean
that's the ask.
I hear the ask, but what I'm asking also is maybe that you know, if somebody would like to suggest that, it's not very hard to run an election at a high school.
The problem is we have members of the youth council that do not go to our school.
Well,
so, you know, I mean, the thing is what you're talking about, a lot of things that are being suggested have been done, have been tried, and the kids have moved in a certain direction.
Those people should have a debate.
So
and the most qualified person should win. I mean, it's the brutality of it's not easy being an elected official. I'm just going to be honest. If the kids are watching right now, sometimes it is brutal, but it's necessary. Government is necessary to a certain extent. Does it overreach? Absolutely it does. But government is a necessary.
I did want to mention too, one thing in addition to the ask from Jenny. One of the main reasons our ask for the city council decision to move forward with the rec program is to loosen some of the restrictions that the youth council has in our municipal code to hold public meetings with agendas and minutes. What I believe Jenny and Shauna have the idea of moving forward is to still have regular meetings, but have them less structured and meet when they are able to without having them being public meetings, as well as not having the structure of minutes and agendas.
Sure, not necessary, absolutely not necessary, but I encourage them to do that and try to run as professional as they can.
That was part of the ask.
It's public meetings means any random salesperson can show up and lecture to the kids.
I mean,
and that concerns some parents.
That's physics 101 right there.
So I just thought, you know, let's get a little bit more freedom to the program, to Shauna or whoever's running it, to be able to make the call and say, we're not going there tonight.
Yep.
You know, and be able to do that. It's not meant to exclude anybody or anything like that. It's meant to it's be more directive.
I get it, but there's usually 3 candidates at most, and maybe 4, and only one gets to be that person. That's the nature of politics. So do we shield them from that, or do we start letting them learn that? That's my whole thing. And
just to chime in here, they've always had structure. We've always had a chair and a president.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes.
So they're learning. The main problem is, especially with the older kids, is they have too busy of lives to even think about a youth council. I mean, there has been a few, but by bringing up the young kids through the ranks, they stick with it, and then they become the leaders. So
yeah,
it was really hard to get seniors and juniors on here.
I just don't want to see it go away from the structure that you guys have worked hard to build out.
Absolutely, and I don't think it should either.
Yes, and that's what, you know, and I think this allows maybe even more freedoms to do more, is what I'm getting. So I'm hoping. All right, that's my only.
Keith, you'd open up a little more freedoms, basically just enlarge what you're doing. As Matt said, get rid of some of the legal formalities, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any other?
Right, Mayor, these kids are smarter than you can imagine.
Oh, I know they are. I got 2 teenagers.
God bless you.
Yes, thank you. All right. So, any more on this youth council? All right. So, we're going to go talk about strategic action plan updates.
I just have 4 really quick things just to let the council know. On tonight's agenda are a few approvals. The first is a resolution number 1899. That is a refunding resolution for some bond refinancing. So we have a couple other bonds and a number of loans in several funds. And so we are looking at combining all those into one bond and refinancing it at a lower rate. The estimated savings is about $650,000 for the city over the term of the bond, and it still pays it off at the same time that we would have normally. So that is on the agenda for tonight for us to move forward. On the agenda also tonight is an agreement with Archiform. That is a design services for the facade building at the utility building and municipal court building. They are a business out of Portland that does specifically historical buildings, and they also have a nice little caveat that they design and build. So if the city council is to move forward with their design, they would actually be the ones that could actually build it as well. So we're going to start to have them coming in doing kind of a walkthrough and design for you and the planning commission to review. So that is on the agenda for tonight. Also on the agenda is a CAT loan payoff. That's pretty routine thing. CAT loans money to somebody for a home improvement. It's placed as a lien on the property. Then when the lien is either paid off or the house is paid off or refinanced, the loan is paid off. The city is listed as the lien holder, so we actually receive the check from a title company, and then we just pass it on back to CAT to lend out for another improvement project. So that is on the agenda tonight. And then, as we discussed earlier, the ad hoc committee for the police department for the police facility will be on there for discussion and improvement.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you, Matt. All right, city administrator report, John Walsh.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
So seems like we're running a little long on time here, so I'll try to be brief. But, hit the highlights anyway. So we're making some progress on the Riverwalk and the Veneer roadway utility design RFQ. There's been a pretty good interest in the project. The word's out on the street that we're going to be going out for that. So that we've had a number of local engineering firms come out and tour the site, getting prepared to submit something when the RFP is available. Our infrastructure financing loans and grants are in place. We're waiting announcement. The St. Helens Industrial Park is moving along on several fronts. We have the parcelization plan strapped up. This was some VLCD funded work that Some of that's been clawed back by the state, but we're still trying to move forward enough to get the work done. And the incomplete piece right now is the infrastructure funding plan, where it talks about the funding and priority timing of those improvements to construct the infrastructure on the site, street extensions and utilities and things of that nature. There's also a preliminary grading plan, which we talked about for about a 20-acre portion. We have those preliminary grading plans back. There's still some, we're still reviewing that internally. There's a drainage plan that accompanies that, but it's definitely, things are moving towards getting something going out on the mill site there. We've heard a lot about the Central Waterfront project. I think MFA did a good job kind of showing where we're at, so I won't spend too much time with that. Just to state that we're in a place where we're, in that slowdown phase, where I think they communicated that, where we're going to need to secure resources to kind of find that next step. And we're working hard to do that, and we'll continue to do so. The urban renewal plan amendment process has multiple steps, and they're all in process as far as the 45-day notice, the consulting with other agencies, taxing districts, and things of that nature. And everything's on schedule. One of the things I wanted to take a pause here and look at closely is the Public Works Director interview schedule. I think Matt's going to share the screen there on that to talk about where we're at with that. We have 6 applications in. What we're proposing is to let it run through this Friday and make a call. The position's open until filled, but at whatever point the council wants to take a look. But this, what we're proposing is that we would, cut it off on the 15th, and then have the following week have a review where the councilors come in and review them for the minimum requirements. Not necessarily making selections, but you're just seeing if they're minimally qualified, and then those are the people that would move on to the interview. And Kathy would arrange the interviewing. The initial one would be similar as before, and be a virtual Zoom type interview, and presumably take the top 3 of those candidates, invite them to participate in person, and see if we have a top candidate. And if there is, then we would go through the process of conditional letter of employment, begin the criminal background check, and then along with the references and things, and then see when they would report to work. So
I like the timeline.
But John, I have a question. Oh, Rick, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Got a question on a policy that we should come up with, like right now. If we pick a winner and that winner decides not to walk away, do we go with the second place finisher, or do we start all over again? Which I just think that is such a kind of a lack of efficiency, in a sense, of our time and staff time. So I don't know how many other council feels that maybe we should go with the second, if the first place winner, and I don't know how many times this has happened. It's happened quite a few times. I know where Keith and I have been here, and they decline the offer to fulfill the position that they won. So it seems to me like, especially if it's close, the second place finisher should be tapped, and that's kind of the way it is in all other government agencies that I know of. All other so I would suggest maybe the council taking a look at that.
Well, I guess that's your prerogative. I guess in the last one, you kind of have to go through, I guess my thoughts are that you would need to go through the process to see if you had some the top 1 or 2 or 3 that were all well qualified and you're satisfied with each and every one of them. So.
What's the rest of council feel?
Well, most certainly not. I feel I'm not going to keep it going on forever. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
the wheels aren't falling off the organization right now, the way they are. They're not falling off.
Well, I didn't say that. I just said a matter of that.
I guess that's where I'm at in my stance right now. Is I mean,
Okay.
That's where I am. I'm just kind of.
I agree with John. I mean, after we do the interviews, then we can decide, how deep do we want to go after we do the interviews, and we see who's there. Then we can make that but we do need to make that determination, though. Yes.
I agree. I don't care when it happens. I just think that it needs to happen because it was a surprise to me the way it happened last time.
Somehow I wish we could, during the interview process, make sure that they're really going to come. I don't know how you would word it.
That won't happen.
Yeah, I know, but it'd be nice if you could.
Well, on the flip side of that is we've had a #1 candidate that after you do some background investigation that, you we're pretty glad you did, right?
Yeah. So it's almost like you got to play it as it goes.
Jenny, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think that, if we interview, kind of like what Rick said, if it's 1 or 2 and it's real close and you feel equally about them, that was not the case this last time for me personally. But it's like, we could, given the COVID situation and given that we're all saying the wheels aren't coming off the bus right now, if we just consider to move forward the way we are until a time certain, because in the COVID, it's difficult. People aren't wanting to move. People aren't wanting to do this. And maybe we're not getting the list of applicants we would ordinarily get in a regular economy, a regular world. And so rather than beating the bush all the way down the road, it's like, if we don't fund somebody that we love, move forward the way we are until we do find someone we love. Because this is a huge change for our staff, for our city, for our future.
You mean move forward until we ask the staff to go out for another request?
Create an org chart without a public works director.
Yeah. One of the problems.
And so, I mean, maybe that means that we don't have a public works director. Maybe we move forward with someone that is more focused on economic development and growing our community, that has a wholly different focus. That is designed that their job focus is to bring jobs here, to revitalize our community. And that would be a completely different job, a completely different skill set.
So we're scrapping your idea, we're scrapping the public works director?
No, I'm just saying, you said, what if the first person doesn't take it? Does that mean we go to #2? Do we go to #3? And I'm like, there's lots of other choices. I don't feel like we have to decide if we're going to take #1 or #2 today when I haven't even seen any applications. I mean, I don't feel comfortable buttoning it down that we take #1 or #2 and then we're done.
Especially when we don't
those would be
have
like choices. What?
Especially when we don't have to.
Right, we don't have to do it. And it's like, we can go.
Why would we lock ourselves into a decision right now, making a policy?
Yeah, that's right. The other thing we've got against us, we've got the pandemic. We've got the riots in Portland. We got the fires. We're not really high on the good list in the news for, Oregon.
I will say this for myself and Councilman Morton. We are head of those departments and we would like to have some stability there. So it is frustrating for us to sit back and with our current state, what we're in right now, as far as interim director and stuff, it's very frustrating for us and them. So knowing that, just keep that in mind, okay? I'm just putting the rest of you three on notice that me and Doug are in an awkward position, and we understand, the council made this decision, but you're leaving us kind of in a weird spot. Just so you guys know.
Yeah, Mayor, I totally agree because, I mean, if the police did not have a chief, what would they do? I mean, and it's just kind of like, and Public Works is one of the largest groups that in our city as a staff and crews. It's very complex. They need leadership.
Yes.
They need it as much as the police department does. And Mayor, you said it correctly. I mean, we're letting a lot of people down by just kind of keeping the ball up in the air, kind of like not making a decision. That's the way I feel.
No, and that's what I heard you say, Doug. That's
Yeah.
what I heard you say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the timeline though, initially on John's report. Did anybody, Matt, can you pull back up that screen for just a minute? Anybody had a problem with that little timeline of the review process? Looked pretty good to me. He's pulling it up right now. So, I mean, we're going to be reviewing next week. Myself and Doug, Keith and Steve, Jenny and John. Top three. Let's do this. I mean, there's no sense in letting it drag out. We've been working a lot lately, and we need to get this job done.
And get my calendar.
Okay.
It's been open for about a month here, so. Just short. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 21st. Yeah.
Yep.
3 weeks.
So it actually did close on yesterday, John?
No, this is just proposed. It's open till filled, and we're just proposing that, you know, we want to move it fairly expeditiously, that we could, this is one possible scenario. You could kick it off a week and throw the whole schedule back a week as well, but, or 2 or 3, or scrap the whole thing. So
Why don't we just push it 1 week out? Would be a month, right? What do you say? When did it go out? August the 21st?
The 21st, yeah.
Yeah. So if we push it till September 21st and then just went with that timeline, so we'll push it a week, September 20 something or the 1st of October?
What are you wishing to push? I'm sorry.
Just kind of push it back a week, the closing date on the applications, Kathy, to
The first review deadline, which is Friday, this Friday.
Good. Yes. So you have actually the application receive date 9/15, which is already passed. We were saying that application receive date be open till the 21st. So we left it open for a month. In case we get a few more. Probably not going to, but you never know.
Okay, so you want it left open until a week after Friday. So that would be the 25th.
We could even go, can't we go the 21st if we wanted to?
Well, that's just one more day.
Okay. Well, you said
Make it Friday, whatever Friday is. It sounds nice that you end at the end of the week.
That's Friday's this week. It's, you know.
Friday, September 25th.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so then just so we're all on the same page, then that would mean that the
following week we do the review.
Right, so it'd be the 28th
Yep.
and 29th.
Yep.
Okay.
We like the timeline.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, John, what else you got?
So a couple things. The Councilor Carlson has the people from the Oregon Film Trail, which is this isn't really has a huge fiscal impact, but it's just wanted to get the council's read on. The governor's office has an Office of Film and TV, and they have a program that's called the Oregon Film Trail. It's where they have signs across communities that have films, and they come in and you participate in the program. It's partially funded by Travel Oregon and their tourism, but it's a series of signs that basically a bread trail.
Noah's going to get Ichabod's for
You're not muted, Kathy.
Kathy, you're not muted. There you are. Now you are.
I can see your red cheeks.
Can you order me Ichabods, Kathy?
Anyway, there's a number of communities around the state that have films that have been filmed in their communities. This is just a sample of something that they drafted for us. One's about Halloween, one's about Twilight.
They sought me out through the chamber, and I partnered with John and thought it would be better if John did kind of the legwork on it.
Sure.
Because it's out of my area, but I was very excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, it's not terribly complicated. It's not terribly expensive. It's another sign in the downtown, and it's part of a program that kind of brings people. It's part of a tourism effort to see places where films were filmed, and doesn't seem very controversial to me, but I wanted to bring it to you to share in that decision. So,
could it be on the highway so that people who are wandering past the area can know that it's down here?
Well, it's an app-based. There's an app that goes supported by this, so as you travel, it kind of takes you to the places where these things were filmed.
Okay, so it's not just a single sign.
Yeah, it's
okay.
The thing that excited me about it is that it links to all Oregon films. So all the people that go to Astoria to see all the sites in Astoria would get prompts that there's this other sign that's not that far away from here. So all those people that follow film locations, it would group all of Oregon locations. So you'd be casting your net to kind of a different demographic.
Sounds good. I mean, yeah, if these people are doing their trip across the country to look at where films were, might as well jump right in as they go by.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate it to be too controversial, but wanted you to be aware of it, share in the decision making, and I will move forward with it. So 13 nights. Last week was canceled due to hazardous air quality. This week again, the air's just not good enough, and that kind of goes with the theme of the next meeting we have is going to be October 7th. We'll be well into our month of Halloween, and just how much different it's going to be this year. The safety-minded, mask, touch-free, controlled, type of environment. It's really going to be a lot different event this year. So a lot of the concerns that we've heard have kind of perpetuated in the media to some degree have been that it's going to be just like it was, and it's certainly not. We're very safety minded about this and taking the governor's order seriously, and we understand it. We're on top of it.
That's a good point. And I think I'll bring it up in my report a little bit later too, is that the media is just saying Halloween Town, and when people think of Halloween Town in this community, they think about the pumpkin lighting ceremonies. They think about the parades of thousands of people, and that is not the case, and we have been stating this as much as we can. So should Halloween Town happen on your survey is not accurate, completely accurate. It's lying by omission, because you're leaving out there is no major pumpkin lighting going on every Saturday. There is no children's parade. There is no parade. There's no celebrity pumpkin lighting. That is lying by omission. I hate to say it like that, but that's exactly what it is. And my friends have even brought it up to me. It seems like they asked me about it. They say, no, it's been downscaled. And I go, yeah, I've been watching it online on Facebook with the papers. And it seems like they're trying to, and they go, that's what we seen too. So they confirm that they seen an agitation going on with it's ridiculous that we even have to have this conversation, because I thought we had put it out there fairly clearly, and they watch these meetings pretty clearly, John. So I'm going to bring it up in my report as well later tonight.
So moving on subjects here, the Columbia County Economic Team. Actually, we had a proposal earlier that Paul Vogel was going to address us as part of the South County Roundup. But I wanted to share that he was selected as the executive director for the position on a permanent capacity. He's moved from the interim to the permanent. As you're well aware, I'm on that board, and part of that, I think they're doing a great work and really have turned around the organization. And the Port of Columbia County also made a great hire, filling their business development officer position, which should have some benefit to St. Helens. Or they hired Matt Miller, which is formerly with the director with the Greater Portland Inc. So he brings a breadth of economic development experience, and we're really excited about him being part of the economic development team in the county here. A couple more things here. I wanted to share that in my role as board of directors for Oregon City County Managers Association, I was just as earlier this week was nominated to sit on the League of Oregon Cities Board of Directors, also representing cities in the state. And there's only a couple of positions on that board that are city managers, so it's kind of an honor. And that's a recommendation. It won't be confirmed until the League of Oregon Cities Conference, which is on October 14th or 15th. That's going to be a virtual conference. And if any of the counselors need to sign up, please contact Kathy or myself, and we can get you signed up. And then lastly, we've also been invited to, Jenny Dimshow and I have been invited to put on sessions at the Oregon Brownfields Conference, which is also a lot of notoriety to the city, and kind of share our story with the waterfront and what we've been working on. And that's October 5th and 6th. So.
Great.
You get to travel?
Pardon me?
You get to travel, or do you have to stay?
No, it's all sitting right here.
What the heck, not a big deal then.
It's all virtual. It used to be travel. It all used to be travel. So John, the nomination though is basically you're just waiting to be confirmed at the league. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's the process.
So you are in. You're just waiting for the league to actually have a legitimate.
Well, there's an outside chance there could be a nomination from the floor that gets some traction, but
Sure.
in the reading the bylaws. But yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, look forward to watching that. So. Okay. So anything else, John? That's it, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, and I think this is just for our information. The Public Works Department monthly summaries, and we'll put in our packet. So, with that, remind people that we will be back here at 6 o'clock. We'll do that EPA. We're basically closing out that grant. So
Community-wide assessment grant. It's a grant we've been working on for several years, and it's a required step to have a public hearing and final closeout report as part of the grant. So.
Yep. So 6 o'clock tonight. We'll see you guys. Okay. With that, we are adjourned.
All right.
Do we have executive session or not?
Oh no, we don't. We don't have no executive session.